We are back, and the Carolina Hurricane season is right around the corner. And honestly, could not be more excited to have hockey on the horizon. I feel like this offseason has been quite long for some reason. Maybe it's because there was a second round exit. Maybe. I don't know. But, anyways, Carolina hockey is back in action here shortly. I know preseason is this Friday. But we're going to kind of jump right into it. The show's going to have a little bit of a new look this year, so just be on the lookout for that. But first topic we want to get to, Carolina Hurricanes have a couple new faces to the roster. We're going to start right away with the one that I think could be the biggest impact for us moving forward, and that's going to be Jack Roslovic. Um, just a little bit of information on him. I know for a fact he's right-handed shot because we watched his highlights there earlier today. I thought he was left-handed. I'm not going to lie. I don't know why, but maybe it's because I haven't seen hockey in a while. Anyways, but Jack Roslovic comes to the team. I know he's a skillful player. He's got a lot of speed. He just has never really had that breakout season. Maybe under Rod's system that can change. But Cam, I'm going to swing it over to you for a little bit of the player bio on Roslovic.
Yeah, looks like he was drafted in 2015. He was actually a round one draft pick to Winnipeg, so he played 4 seasons there. Spent the next four in Columbus, and then I think was dished in the
Trade
offseason
deadline
to
last year, I
New
thought.
York.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was either the offseason or trade deadline last year to New York, and kind of never really. I don't know how many games he actually played with New York. Honestly, I don't think it was a whole. I didn't really notice him. If he did, he played like fourth line center, so he wasn't like a mainstay for them. But 6'1", basically 200 pounds. Like you said, he's 27 years old, so he's still pretty young. Right-handed shot center, which is what the Canes needed. So
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely think it's a good ad. It's definitely something they needed for sure. I don't know if it fills, still the void of, we kind of have. I think at this point we have like three third line centers that we're kind of choosing from to who's going to play second line center. So we'll see. But yeah, no, he definitely looks good. We needed a right-handed center for sure.
Yeah,
Like
for
we've
sure.
we've been lacking one for so long. That's high quality. So hopefully he makes a big impact though for sure.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that can play. He could play top line minutes. I mean, he played in Winnipeg. I mean, he was the wing, on the right side for line A and that crew. So I think he does have the ability to play at that in that top six. Do we have a need for him in our top six? Who to be determined. He could easily play there. We watched, like I said, we watched him this morning. He's got an incredible release. I mean, his release is so good. And, he does, he can play. We didn't see too much of the PKs on him, but we saw, some power play potential on him. And being a right hand shot helps too, because, we're far lacking
And on the right-handed
in the
shots
right
for
handed
sure.
shot. So I think it was a good ad, and we'll see, like I said, in Roddy's system, he's pretty quick. He reminds me a lot when he skates, and I told Kyle this morning. He kind of reminds me a lot of Shane Willis, and I think Shane was a right-handed shot as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he skates a lot like him. His release is a lot like him. He's got a quick, he doesn't take a lot of time. He doesn't waste time with the puck. It's on and off his stick, and so I think it could be a benefit for us. Just depends on where he filters into the lineup and whether or not he fits the role better than one of the younger guys. Because I think that's going to be sort of a to be determined after this, after training camp, whether he slots in a top six role or a bottom six role, or does he, is he, odd man out? Who knows? I mean, you just never know with Rod. So, but I think he will slot in the top 12.
Yeah.
Um, I don't
As
think
of
I don't
a
think it'd be out of the lineup.
As of right now, he's slotted in as a second line winger. From what we've seen so far at training camp, whether that stays, I think he's just trying to get a feel out. But he was playing alongside Kokaniemi and Natchez. So I mean, if it fits, it might be an interesting combo. But in my opinion, if that's the case, you probably have to slide Kokaniemi out to the wing, which he hasn't worked out great there in the past. But I mean, you never know. But moving right along, we're going to go to a not so new face in Shane Gossesbear. We had him for a couple games, a cup of coffee and a playoff run. And I liked what I saw out of him. He ends up leaving in the offseason, going to Detroit, and then has a really good year with Detroit last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's
I
one
think
of the
it's his
top power
best.
play
Yeah, I
producers. Yeah,
think
he
it
was
was
one
his
of the
best
top.
year.
Yeah, 100%. It was his best year in Detroit, or well, best year in his
I think in
season.
total, yeah, out
Yeah,
of
best
everything, he
year in his
was. Yeah.
season, and he was the best defenseman on Detroit last year as far as point total.
Oh
Now,
yeah,
whether that translated everywhere else, well, I'd have to go back and watch a couple more Detroit games, but I do know for a fact, yeah, career year, career numbers, and he was kind of the man of the man on the power play for Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big ad for Carolina, especially when we struggled on the power play,
Yeah.
really, for the majority of playoffs last year. We didn't feel like we ever had that top power play guy to run it, to quarterback it. But I know they tried to slot Burns up there. I've never really liked Burns on the top power play unit, maybe in the secondary as a shooter strictly, but never really liked Burns as the point guy
Mm-hmm.
on it. And then kind of slotted Tony D'Angelo in, and that never really worked out either. So hopefully with a new face like Shane Gostisbehere coming in with probably the most amount of confidence he's ever come into a season with,
Mm-hmm.
maybe lightning strikes twice.
Yeah, no, and I think I think he wants to be here too. I mean, he really loved his time here, even though it was brief. But excuse me, he's a little. I mean, he's a better version of, in my opinion, better version. Actually, a much better version of Tony D'Angelo. He's got he's same frame, same build, same skill. They can pivot that power play off the top, but I think he's got a better skill set, and quite honestly, I think he's got a better attitude towards the team culture than Tony does. So I think it's going to be a really good pickup. I think what you and I talked about this morning, Kyle. I think the only question mark with him is who do you put him with? And then I think that's going to be the key coming out of training camp is does he stay where he's at in the sort of the current training camp roster, or does he slide with somebody else? And I think we all have our opinions of our top two pairing and what they should or shouldn't do. But anyways, we'll see what Rod wants to do, and we'll see it when training camp ends and the regular season starts. But he's going to be one that's going to be and there's a couple other guys we'll talk about later that are going to be sneaky picks that are sneaky pickups that are going to really help you not only during the season but in the playoffs. And I think that's where guys with his skill set can really help you. I think are to make a deep run in the playoffs. And he didn't get enough time the last time he was here to really get indoctrinated into the system. So I think this year having a full season you're going to see a much different Shane Gostisbehere heading into the playoffs. So, and I guess I'm saying we're going to make playoffs, which I think we will. But I think he's going to make a bigger difference this time around than he did the first time.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, like you said, same build as Tony. It's actually his second best year. His first best was actually one of his seasons in Detroit. It was 17 and 18. He had 65 points. Last year he had 56. So it was the second best season he's ever played and ever had points wise. But yeah, he's a big ad. Is he left-handed or right-handed?
Lefty,
The website I'm on doesn't show me.
left-handed.
He's left. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough finding him now who to play him with. You don't know if you play him with somebody like Chatfield, just somebody that's gonna be just a defensive animal kind of thing, where he just
Mm-hmm.
is on the puck all the time. I think that would be a good pairing. But then again, Chatfield and Orloff was working out pretty well last year. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you really want to break them up? I'm still under the impression that I think Burns needs to play third line minutes and not first. I really think having somebody like Gostisbehere, or well, not necessarily Gostisbehere, but like Sean Walker playing top line with Slavin
Mm-hmm.
would be. Then that's another guy we're going to go into, but that would be the guy. That would be the pairing I'd like to see, really. But who knows if it's going to work out like that? I don't know. I doubt it because of how Gleason runs the deep pairings. He doesn't like to change very much ever.
Well,
So,
neither does Rod. Rod's not a big component of change
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
you say that, but Rod's more willing to, and I think
Jumble the lines.
Rod has more control over the offense than he does the defense, just because he
Mm-hmm.
played offense. So him and Jeff Daniels kind of work together with shuffling lines and stuff like that. And I'm sure I'm sure Jeff's probably the guy that's more willing to shake up the lines, and he probably goes to Rod and he's like, hey, look, let's try this look here, let's try
Mm-hmm.
these guys with this guy, and Rod's like, yep, go with it. So I think it's just a product of two different people thinking of it two different ways. But at the end of the day, I think Shane will definitely be a good ad for sure. I mean, he can't hurt. Like you said, he's a better version of Tony D'Angelo,
Hmm.
and I actually really like it a lot. So I think he's a good replacement for because he basically is replacing not he's replacing Shea.
Yeah, I would
So
say Brady Shea. Yeah,
Brady
for
Shea
sure.
would be who he's replacing. I think it's a good replacement at a better price, basically. Like he's making half what Shea's making in
Hmm.
Nashville. And, it's not any slight on Shea. I still think Shea's a quality defenseman for sure and would have
Hmm.
loved to have him resign. But, at the end of the day, you got a salary cap for a reason. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, it's a good ad. I like him a lot. So
Yeah,
he'll do good
and
things here.
to your point too, Cam, I think Rod showed he made adjustments a little too late last year, I think. But
Yeah.
he showed his ability to, or his willingness to make adjustments, and I think that's going to be, my opinion, going to be the key to this season is how quickly he adjusts things to better the system.
Yep.
Because he's got a great system, but it's not great enough to win a championship.
Oh,
We'll talk
well,
about that
yeah,
later.
I was gonna say we'll cover
But
that one later.
I think his willingness, just to jump on your point though, his willingness to make changes last year showed me that this year could be a better version of the Rod Brindamore system.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll jump on to here shortly. I do want to get to the other familiar, or well, not familiar, but new faces to the roster. Sean Walker, as we were just mentioning, he also is going to be in a Carolina Hurricane for at least a little bit of time. His contract was a rather lengthier one, if I remember correctly. But anyways, Sean Walker joins Carolina. I really like this pickup because he's a really good puck moving defenseman. Um, and he's a really good skater. He's really good. He's pretty good defensively. I think he's a really kind of a different look than Pesci was for us last year because that's
Mhm.
who he's replacing is Brett Pesci. And
Yeah.
so it's a different look, Brett Pesci. It's going to be a way better skating, smoother skating, probably not as physical and not maybe as, gritty PK wise and stuff along those, but it's still a really good PK guy. He had a couple penalty kill goals last year for the Flyers. I,
Yeah, he had
I
four. I think four of his five goals in the highlights we saw were shorthanded goals.
PK goals. So I mean, definitely a good penalty killer. But the thing with him, he's not afraid to jump into the rush. It's a good thing and a bad thing because when he does jump in, we got to make sure it's 100% out because he does like to be the first man, kind of like Tony D'Angelo did a little bit last year. But if it is, a clean breakout, having that fourth guy jumping with a lot of
Mhm.
pace coming up the middle, it creates so much more offense. And I think it could be a really good ad and a really good pickup. But as of right now, him and Shane Gostisbehere are playing together on a unit as a tandem. I don't necessarily love that tandem just because Shane Gostisbehere is a very offensive minded defenseman and Sean Walker likes to jump into the rush. And so I'm scared that we're going to be left, stranded on an island with no defenseman back. And we're going to have, you
Yeah.
know, Barry Kokaniemi and Jordan Stahl sitting on the blue line trying to defend
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kucherov or somebody come flying down the wing. I really actually, Cam, I didn't even think about the combination until you brought it up, but I like the idea of having Sean Walker and Dmitry Orlov together because Dmitry can play a good defensive game, a really good defensive game, but those two guys could really move the puck up ice and really get transition going fast and quick. And I think that could be a sneaky combo. But what are you guys' thoughts on Sean?
Yeah, no, I think he's a good pickup for sure. I definitely think I didn't realize he's also 5'11", so him and Shane are both
Hmm.
5'11", so our
Yep,
our decor definitely got smaller for
100%.
sure.
Hmm.
So Pesci was 6'2", I believe, and I think Shea was over 6 feet. He was either
Yeah.
6 or 6'1".
I think he was 6'2"
So
as well. I think they're both 6'2".
yeah, so we definitely got smaller, but that doesn't mean they got worse for sure.
Hmm.
So I still think we're gonna have a good decor. I really and just with Walker too. I mean, he's played in LA for 5 years basically, and then got dished to Philly in the offseason last year. Put up 22 points with them, and then went to Colorado in the
Hmm.
trade deadline. Played 18 games with Colorado, had 7 points. So
Hmm.
you know he was a +2, and that's really where I want to look at is in Colorado because no shade on Philly, but they don't have the team Colorado has.
Nope.
So when he's playing in a good team and a good system, and again,
Yeah.
no shade on Philly, I'm just saying they're not Colorado. They're not a cup
Hmm.
contender team
Hmm.
yet. They will be, but not yet.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so,
He-
in that kind of system, I mean, 7 goals in 18 games for a defenseman, I mean,
mhm,
that's pretty good. I mean, that's not, and for a guy, he didn't get any power play time for sure, like none because of who they already have there.
mhm,
So that's all if he's on the penalty kill or if it's 5-on-5,
mhm.
so, and he's averaged, I think, 16 minutes a game. Yeah, he averaged almost just under 18 time
That's
on ice
almost
for
Yeah.
more
Colorado.
impressive that he had 7 goals with only 16 minutes of ice time.
Yeah,
That's
Mhm.
well,
third
it's
line. That's third pairing minutes
that's what
almost.
I mean. Like he's not playing 25, 26, 27 minutes, and he's putting up 7 points with Colorado.
Yeah.
So when he has guys that can, move the puck and has high quality
Mhm.
players around him, he
Mhm.
definitely can shine. So hopefully that continues with Carolina. But yeah, no, I definitely like the pickup for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I think he fits our system really well. We don't have a defenseman that really likes to stay home, quite honestly, and all of them. I mean, Jacob is
I
up
was gonna say
Probably
always.
Slavin's the
Slavin's
only
about the
one.
only one
Slavin's
that's
the closest we have, and he's always up in the rush too. So,
that's true.
but I think in general, he really is I think Pesci wasn't so much a jump in the rush kind of guy. I mean, he did, and he did sometimes, but not nearly as much as I think Walker's going to do that. So,
Or as
um,
effective.
yeah, well, that's what I mean. Is I think he's a smaller version of Brett Pesci, but I think more skilled version of Brett Pesci when it comes to the offensive side. The defensive side, not so sure yet. So we may have to change what we do because of the 6 defensemen we have. But I think in general, he really fits well. I think he's going to fit well into our system. And I'm with you. I think having him with Gostisbehere, um, to be determined, I guess. It just really depends. It's like, everybody's an offensive minded defenseman. So who do you put everybody with to make the balance work? So I think, we'll see what they come up with, but I like the ad. I think, it sucks that we got rid of Pesci and Shea, but at the same time, I think we got 2 quality defensemen back in return that can provide, a different dimension, Ghost on the power play, and then Walker on the PK. I mean, Pesci was a great PK guy, but so was Walker. So and a much more effective PK guy when he scores, most of his goals on shorthanded. So I think that's a bonus for us too. So we'll see, but I like the pickup.
Yeah, for sure. And then we'll touch on the final player. Unfortunately, according to the sources, he is out on injury already. But that is William Carrier. This was honestly probably one of my favorite pickups of the
He's
offseason.
my favorite.
Yeah, because he's a Swiss Army knife in a way.
Mhm.
He's reminds me a lot of Jesper Foss, but way bigger and way more
Bigger,
physical.
yeah.
Yep. So
Way bigger.
he's very, very, very good offensively. Sorry, very, very, very good at doing everything right in the offensive zone.
Hmm.
Not maybe your biggest point production guy, but the same way Jesper Foss is always in the right position, always seems to be intercepting pucks, helping out, a good stick in the lane to generate a couple more chances. That's kind of the same thing you're going to get out of William Carrier. He's got a big motor on him. I know that for a fact. I've seen him absolutely flying up and down the ice in Vegas. Like I said, I really like this pickup. I think this might be the best ad. And right now he's on a line with Jordan Stahl and Jordan Martinook if he's healthy. And boy, that's a heavy
It's gonna be a fun
line.
line to
Yeah.
watch.
That's a
Yeah.
heavy
It's a
line.
heavy
Yeah.
line.
Yeah. I don't know if he's just that big or wide. So his I don't know if he got or he has the largest shoulder pads in the NHL, but man, I tell you what, he is wide from the tops of his shoulders across. He looks like a linebacker in the
Oh,
NH
you've
in
seen
the
his face,
NFL.
his jaw lines out here. I
So
mean, he's got
yeah.
deflectors on
No,
his jaw, dude.
Yeah.
big
So
guy.
so but I love that line combination. It's going to be a heavy shutdown line, as then assuming Jordo has a good season. I think in the faceoff dot, I think they can be really, really effective against the top lines of other teams, and having that Carrier again. I love Jesper Foss. I hated that he's out, but this guy adds a dimension to that line that Martinook was the heavy lifter. He and Jordo was the heavy lifter. Now they don't have to all, those 2 guys, they can spread the load a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, Jesper Foss was a great physical player, but he's not the mass of a William Carrier. And I think that's going to be a good dimension in our in our bottom six that, you know, we had with Steph Nason, but not necessarily to that degree. I think Carrier is a better version of Steph Nason, more physical, more skilled,
Mhm.
and but you know, we'll see how that line works out together. But I love that trio. I saw it this morning. I was like, you know, dude, I'm digging that. I like
Yeah.
I like that combo of those three guys together.
Cam, what's his
Yeah.
bio?
Yeah, he's 6'2", 220, so big guy.
Hmm.
That's a
Like,
horse.
well,
My
and the
God.
and the thing that we've been, preaching on here too for really since we started is, the Canes are just missing like that big physical winger that
Hmm.
can just kind of do everything, like
Yeah.
you're kind of saying, can retrieve pucks, has a nose for the net, can play defense in the D zone, can transition well, has good playmaking ability. And he did have a rough go of it last year, only 8 points in 39 games. So, and then I mean, obviously the year before that he had career high 25 points,
Hmm.
in 56 games. So definitely had a drop off last year. I guess he had some injuries last year, only playing 39 games. Either that or he's
I
in and
know
out
he
of the
did. Yeah,
lineup.
he had some hand
So
issues.
yeah, so I also heard that his injury is just a day-to-day thing, like, it's nothing major.
Oh,
So,
cool.
Raj just,
Okay.
I
Good.
saw something from, I think it was Walt Ruff yesterday, basically saying that it was just, Rod basically being like, "Hey, we have the ability to be, at this time of year, we can do an abundance of caution, so we're just gonna keep
Yeah.
him out,
Yeah.
out of, basically necessity, saying, hey, we don't wanna, like, push him too hard right now if we don't have to,"
Yeah.
because they don't. So, with, it just being the start of
Yeah.
preseason this week. So,
But he
yeah, he's
also
definitely
yeah,
my favorite pickup for
he
sure.
has a bit of nastiness to him that I think that we didn't have necessarily. I mean, we had some guys that would push the envelope, Martinuck would push it a little bit, but um he's a, you know, he's got a little bit of grit to his game that he can get under your skin. He can do that kind of work. He did that in Vegas, and I think that's something that, you know, we're not tough enough to play against sometimes, and I think he adds a huge side of that where, they're not gonna like going on the ice when he's on the ice, and he's a kind of a grittier version maybe of Niederreiter. He's got that same build, that same bulk, the same size on heaviness on the wall, um, but he's also not afraid to go to the front of the net and chop somebody and, get under somebody's skin if he needs to. So it'll be exciting to see. Hopefully the injury is not too bad and he can make the opening night, but we'll see how training camp goes.
Yeah. The only thing that I felt like we missed in the offseason was getting another forward. I felt like we needed a top six guaranteed forward. Maybe Roslovic's that guy. I don't disagree with Cam though. I feel like he's kind of simmered off a little bit, especially going to New York. But they also had an abundance of
Hmm.
forwards that were doing really well last year. So
Yeah,
Hmm.
kind of gets
he was kind
lost
of the
in the
guy
shuffle a
on
little
the
bit.
outside looking in
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah, it gets
He was
lost in the
outside of that
shuffle.
core.
But where I think we might be able to get some of those offensive numbers from is possibly a couple rookies having a shot at making the roster. We're not going to spend too much time on them because, until proven or until made, we gotta see more out of him. But the one I think has the best chance of making the roster, and we'll go to him first, is Felix Unger Sorum. Uh, as an 18-year-old, he was lighting up the
Hmm.
SHL last year. He lit up World Juniors. He is a very patient, very poised, very calm player on the puck, and he's not a small guy either. He might be a little bit of a rail, as we'll call him right now, tall and skinny and lengthy, but he's not a short guy by any stretch of the imagination. And he's so poised with the puck.
Hmm.
He just has such an ability to make plays. He has a great vision with it. He reminds me a lot of, and I made this comparison a little bit earlier. He's like a right-handed Nikita Kucherov. Whether he can ever fulfill that same level of, skill, I don't know. But the way he views the game and the way he sees the ice, at least at that SHL level, as an 18-year-old playing against grown men,
Yeah.
that's quite impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we saw the highlights this morning too, Kyle. And his vision, his cross ice vision, and just to get and really the patience, and that's the key with with hockey IQ at the highest levels is patience with the puck and not just, hot potato off the stick and go. But I mean, don't get me wrong, it's important to be quick on and off the stick if there's a play. But I tell you, man, he holds the puck, and he waits for something to happen. And then the defense gets all turned around, and then boom, it's on a stick and in the net. And and I think you made the comparison of Kucherov, and I said he's sort of a version of Turbo that we could see down the road. I don't know if I think he's ready for the NHL. But his passing ability is better than his shooting ability. And his shooting ability is great. Don't get me wrong, his release is crazy good, but his ability to make a pass and to create that opening, I think he's definitely making an argument to make the top 12, in my opinion. So
Yeah. No, I think it kind of comes down to, I think that a lot of the man, it's really hard to say like who I feel could make. I think honestly, there's the main four like Nadeau, Jackson Blake, Scott Morrow, and Unger Sorum. I think all four of them could make the roster this year. You know, I don't want to cast a dark shadow over this season, but I definitely think this is a bridge year for the Hurricanes. I think this is kind of a feeling out process while these really, really young stars really develop, I think.
mhm,
Because I think all four of these guys are going to be on the Canes. It's just a matter of when. I really
mhm,
think they will,
mhm.
or they're going to get dished in a trade somewhere. I hope they don't because I like all four of them a lot. So
Yeah.
I just think it's a matter of developing all of them.
Mm.
I think as far as who I think is probably the most NHL ready at this point, yeah, it's probably either Unger Sorum or Jackson Blake. It's one of those two. I still think Nadeau's really young. He's,
Mhm,
still smaller guy. He needs to kind of, get some build on him. Jackson Blake's a big guy. I don't know if you guys have seen pictures of him, but he's
mhm.
actually a big guy. He's
He's
really
filled out
is.
nicely. Yeah.
He
He
is
also
a
is the
big
oldest
dude.
of the bunch
He
too.
is, yeah. He's 21,
Yeah.
so he's definitely the oldest. He's the one that I think the transition to the NHL could be easier than the
Mhm,
other guys. I
mhm.
think the other guys would struggle at first. I think Scott Morrow could be, but again, we have six defensemen, so
Yeah,
I think again, Scott Morrow, we're kind of bridging the gap between Burns. So once
yeah,
Burns
yeah,
leaves,
yeah,
then
yeah,
Morrow comes in. So I think I think he understands that as well. I think a year in the AHL for
yeah.
Morrow and Nadeau specifically, like those two. I
Mm.
mean, they're going to put up crazy numbers
Yep.
this year in the AHL for
Yeah,
sure. With
I told
with
I
what
told
we've
Cam
seen
this
in
I
the
told Kyle the same thing.
yeah, with what we've seen in the preseason tournament that they had. I mean, Morrow had
Mhm,
I think he had a point a game.
mhm.
Oh,
Like
he's disgusting. He's so good.
crazy. He's so good. He's so good. 6'2", just a giant guy, big defenseman,
Mhm.
right-handed shot. So he would be like the one-for-one Pesci replacement, but I think he's
Yeah.
way better offensively, like
Oh,
way
without a
better.
doubt. Without a doubt.
So he just needs to develop that defensive prowess that Pesci had, where positionally Pesci seemed to always be in the right defensive position in the D zone.
Yeah.
Now, did it take him a while to get there? Sometimes, but he
Yeah.
was there.
Well,
He
eh
was positionally sound, and that's kind of what the Canes are missing a little bit this year.
mhm,
That I think they could struggle with, especially in Rod's system, because in the D zone, it's very important that your positioning and your skating
mhm.
is on point. Because if it's
Yeah.
not, you're going to get burnt, and then it's a one-on-one with the other guy and the goaltender. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I mentioned this morning to Kyle, and I think to jump onto your point, Cam, I 100% agree that, if they're not gonna make the top 6, then send them to the American League.
I agree.
Because they're gonna get tons of minutes, they're gonna get tons of opportunities, they're gonna play on the power play, they're gonna do everything they can, and seat time is so important for those younger kids, and if you're gonna sit there on a third, fourth taking third, fourth line minutes or even fourth line minutes, then no way. I wouldn't do it. I'd send them there all for the next 2 years if they needed to. Even with Morrow, and as well as I do, Cam, defense is a tough game to play. And there's not many Cale Makars out there that can come into the game, but yeah, Morrow's a Cale Makar lookalike, so to speak, when it comes to his ability to perform in the collegiate level. So
Yeah.
he may be ready of the group of those three, he may be the most ready to get into an NHL lineup. But I'm with you. If we have 6 ahead of him, give him 25 minutes a game in the American League. Let him work at a professional level and
Yeah.
get used
Let
to
him
it.
put up 70 points in the
Yeah,
AHL.
let him
Like,
do
let
it.
him do it.
And I think that's the key. If we have the ability to not play these guys, if unless they're going to play top 4, top 6 minutes, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Guys.
For sure.
And the best part is that we were mentioning all these names like Felix Unger-Sorum, Scott Morrow, Jackson Blake, and Bradley Nadeau. And they're not even our top prospect. Our top prospect is going to be here next year as well in Alexander Nikishin. He's already said
Yeah.
he's not signing another contract with Scott. He wants to come to North America.
Mhm.
And if I remember correctly, there was a KHL All-Star game with Andrei Svechnikov went over. He was
Mhm.
playing for Team NHL. So did Pyotr Kochetkov, our two Russian savants. Actually, and Orlov was over there too.
Orlov was over there too.
Yeah,
Orlov,
so
yeah.
all of our Russian savants were over and playing in the NHL versus KHL game, and on the other side of the ice was Alexander Nikishin. And rumor has it they had some nice dinners and some good laughs together, had some fun in Moscow, and but that's kind of what you need to do to kind of bridge that gap between getting him comfortable to go to North America. And I think that's why we brought in a lot of the Russian guys that we did, and we've been heavy on drafting Russian, is because it's hard to when you can get a group over here, it's a lot easier to get a group over here than it is to get one or two and kind of pluck them out. So
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see Nikishin come in, and he's going to be the Dmitry Orlov replacement. I know unless we can get Orlov on a little bit of a better deal, but at 7 million, I love Orlov. I just don't know if he's worth the 7 million. I think he can
Mhm.
probably still get 7 million somewhere else. So whether we resign him or not sure. But I think we're talking about Cam. I'm with you. I think this is a bridge year because when we look at the prospects coming up, I mean, we got five. We got five guys that are all like we could be in a really good shape here in like a year or two time. This year,
Yeah.
maybe not so much, but a year's two time, and maybe you never know. These all these guys could be ready. We could
Yeah.
we could have a couple injuries, and then all of a sudden we have Unger
Mhm.
Sorensen, Blake, and Nadeau all in the forward lineup, and then we have Morrow on the D pairing, and
Yeah.
none of them. I mean, the,
And
if
then
they
they
can
don't leave.
yeah, if they can
Yeah.
steal a job, then steal a job. Happy
Mhm.
days. Go steal a job. I'd be the happiest person in the world if they come in and steal a job. Not happy for the guy getting the job stolen from, but I mean, if they're going to come in and make an impact and score goals, I mean, Blake's got one of the best shots I've ever seen. Same with Nadeau. They can just rip it. They have the goal scoring instincts. They know where to be. They know how to get there. And then you get a guy like Felix Unger Sorensen dishing them the puck. My goodness. You get Aho dishing them the puck. I
Mhm.
mean, you get a couple of these guys. Martin Necas even. He's got really good passing abilities. But I think that that's going to be a really big storyline developing throughout the year is I think these guys are going to start the year in Chicago, at least I would say 50 to 75% of them, more likely 75. The only two I could possibly see making the roster is going to be Scott Morrow and Felix Unger-Sorum. I think those are the two most NHL ready guys. I'm with you, Cam. I think Blake is most physically probably ready out of the bunch, other than Morrow. Morrow's 6'2", he's 215 or whatever. He's built like an NHL
Mhm.
Good
defenseman
guy.
already.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree. Blake is, I think where he's going to lack a little bit is he hasn't played that pro game. So getting him into a transition period where he's playing a pro level game, he's playing against pro level defensemen, older men, it's going to be different. Felix did that last year. He was playing in the SHL, the top tier in Sweden. It's arguably the third or fourth best league in the world as far as hockey's concerned, right around the AHL level, in my opinion.
Probably
So he was
third.
already
Yeah.
doing that last year. Because in my opinion, it goes NHL, KHL, then probably the AHL, and then SHL is right there. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Mhm.
either that or La Liga in Finland. But outside of that, I mean, he's playing in the arguably a similar league to the AHL already, and he put up points last year and looked dominant. He was on their top power play unit for the team. I can't remember the team, so I'm just not going to bother. But he's a top power play unit. He played really well, and he played really smart minutes, and he played a lot of minutes already.
Mhm.
So that's why I think his transition could be a better one. Granted, different game. It's a
Yeah.
smaller sheet of ice, not as much
Mhm.
space to
Mhm.
dipsy doodle and kind of do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But again, you're already playing against men that are
Yeah.
stronger than you, and he was able to do so. So I think that transition could be a little bit easier for him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's still young too, so let's not lose
He's
sight
only
of that. I mean, I
19.
tell you, he's
Yeah,
only
He's only
19 years
19.
old, and
yeah.
he's playing against against men in the other league. So I'm with you both. I think those two guys are the most ready. Will they crack the roster? I don't know. We'll see.
That's what remains to be seen. But I can tell you, with Chicago now being our AHL team moving forward, those guys are probably going to be the first call-ups.
Oh, for sure.
More than likely. You might get a Tyson Yost here or there. You might get one of those other depth pieces, a Nick Robinson, I believe is Nick Robinson, right? Yeah. Eric Robinson. Sorry, Eric. Yeah, Nick's in Toronto, but Eric Robinson, we could see a call up like that if needed towards, and I think that if none of the rookies pan out, we'll probably see those call ups way towards the later half of the season when the points are really what matters because they're just a little bit more NHL ready and a little bit more NHL proven at this point. But early on in the season, if unfortunately we do suffer some injuries, I see some of these rookies coming in and possibly making a big impact.
Yeah, I think it depends on who gets injured, obviously, but I think Eric Robinson's he's a big kid too. He played with Roslovic in Columbus, so he can he can play NHL minutes. He has played NHL minutes, so and I think he's like I said, he's a big kid that will like I said, it depends on who gets hurt. If there's a top six guy that comes out, then I see one of the kids coming up from the American League. But if it's somebody on the wing on the third, fourth line, then I see a guy like Robinson coming into the lineup. Not necessarily pulling one of those guys out of Chicago at the moment. Who knows? Depends on what they want to do. But I think it's really specific on who gets injured. And we know injuries are going to happen. Hopefully, knock on wood. I got a lot of wood around me, but I don't necessarily know who would slot in and who they think would be the most fitting to fill the role that's needed. But like I said, I'm a big believer that give these kids another year to light it up in the American League and get a ton of seat time and come into next training camp with a little different perception on pro hockey and to get some strength. I mean, we'll talk about a few of our other guys, getting some bulk over the summer. So I think that's going to be the key is just getting bigger, bigger and stronger.
My question to you is, do you think Jarvis is a different player if he played a year in the AHL?
I mean, probably. I mean, I think every player can be a different player. I think the biggest player that could have benefited, and I don't want to see this happen to one of these three guys, is Kotkaniemi. I think he was the biggest player that should not have played pro hockey at the age that he did when he was drafted. I think Jarvis came into the NHL a little bit differently. I don't think he was given as big a role as or the expectation wasn't as big for him. He did play. Did he come straight out of the draft into making the team?
No, he played one extra year of juniors, but then he came straight
right
here.
So well, I mean, there again, he played an extra year junior.
Well, so have all these guys. Every one of these guys has played an extra year at whatever they're doing.
Yeah. You don't know. I mean, it's all about what the need is at the time.
And the player.
I think we needed a player. I think we needed a dynamic player, and Jarvis was that player at that time. And
I still think that's what I'm getting at is I think we need a dynamic player this year.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe we'll see. But again, I still hold to if they're not going to get top 6 minutes, then don't play them.
Yeah, fair.
That's my opinion. I mean, I think Jarvis did that. Because we didn't have we needed something like him in the lineup, and we didn't have it at the time. I mean, we probably had some guys similar, but Jarvis was just so good in tight. He's a small guy, but he was just such good he had such good stick, such good hands, that he's sort of Nadeau-like, where he's got that skill set. But I still believe that if they're not going to get top 6 minutes, then leave them, let them play in the American League and don't even think about it.
Yep.
You don't want to destroy a kid's confidence by, putting an undersized forward into the NHL lineup and having to go against, some of these grizzly defensemen, the Radko Gudises of the world, and those guys that'll just absolutely destroy you in front of the net. So you don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, we will move right along. Those are the new faces of Carolina and some of the rookies we think can crack the roster. But one big question that I kind of want to pose here is who needs to have the biggest bounce back year for the Carolina Hurricanes? I want to get your guys' thoughts first on this one.
Cam, you want to go first?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think a guy that really needs it, that we were really high on the horse about coming into last year, And I think I don't know if we probably all have the same guy, but if he doesn't perform this year, he's probably going to get dished in the offseason, and that's Kokaniemi. Like
Mhm.
he's got to have a big year this year. Like he has to. He has to find where he fits. He has to find his confidence. He has to find what he does best because towards the latter half, like to start the year, he was on fire. Like he was scoring. I mean, I think he had, I don't even know how many points he had in the first 15 games. I mean, he might have had 15 points. Like he
I think
was,
it's 16 and 15.
that's what I mean. He was just tearing it up. And then, I don't know, somebody dumped a bucket of water on him. Like he just completely shut down and
Mhm.
wasn't performing like he was. So, I think he definitely has the ability to, and we've seen it because we saw it in the year prior that he can be the guy. He's a
Mhm.
really great player, but it's inconsistent right now.
It's all confidence.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of it is confidence too, and
Yeah.
just who he's kind of playing with as well can impact. And then another guy that I think that the two for me is him, and then Nate just has to have a big year too. Like
Mhm.
he really does because, but again, and I think with the second line looking like Kokaniemi at center and Nate just on the wing, is it going to be the same old story again with Nate
Yeah.
just wants to play center. Like we signed him. Like let him play center. I
Mhm.
don't understand.
Mhm.
Like let him play. He's a right-handed shot. He's a big guy. Granted, yes, he can be a liability in the D zone. I'm not disagreeing with that, but he's got the skating speed to be able to keep up with anybody in the NHL. Like he can keep up with anybody, and in Rod's system with man on man, he can literally keep up with anybody. He just
Yeah.
has to get better positionally in the D
Yeah.
zone, and I think he'll be okay. But it really just comes down to that. I
Yeah.
think those two guys really need to have
Yeah.
good
I
years.
agree with you on the Kokniemi piece. That was going to be my guy. I do think he's a big body, and he's continuing to develop. He's getting older, so hopefully he can find his way around. I guess so. I'll say the sophomore slump, but he's probably not a sophomore last year. But anyways, he needs a big season, and if he's going to get top 6 minutes, then he needs to perform like he's getting top 6 minutes. And I think the other guy too, I don't disagree with Natchez, but I think the other guy too, I'm not saying he had a bad year last year, but I think Andrei Svechnikov has to take this team on his back. I think he's got to have that kind of season where he's playing with absolute 100% or 1,000,000% confidence. I think that's the guy that I think will make the difference, um, for this team heading into a playoff run. And we've added the depth pieces, but if Andrei Svechnikov can play like we know that he can play, and not play either reserve because he's afraid to get hurt, whatever it is, um, he's a guy that can absolutely take over a game. I mean, we've seen him do it. He's taken over one shift. It was like that was all Andrei Svechnikov. He didn't score the goal, but he created the play. And I think he's the other guy that sort of my honorable mention. I think Kotkaniemi absolutely has to have a good year. If not, he's out of here.
Yeah,
But
I think so too.
Svechnikov, I think, has to have a monster year for this team to legitimately have a shot at winning or going very deep in the playoffs.
All good picks. I'm gonna go one different. Um, and I don't even think he had a bad year last year, but the years before he was a lot more in the scoring department than he was last year, and that's Jordan Martinook. I think I'm just really trying to be different than you two. Mine was going to be Svechnikov, but you guys took three, so I had nowhere else to go. Anyways, I think
Yeah.
Martinook has the capability to be an offensive presence. I think last year he struggled a little bit offensively, so it's just gaining that offensive confidence back. He does everything else right in the game. He's
Mhm.
an energizer bunny. He knows what his job is. So I really don't want to pick him, but I think offensively he could have a little bit of a bounce
Mhm.
back year. The other one I was gonna go with would be Kochetkov, and that's just how he started last year. I think the second half of his season was a
Mhm.
really good setting stone for the future point because he was lights out the second half of the season.
It earned
But
him the backup spot this year.
yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, yeah, very true. I don't think it's the backup spot, to be honest with you, but we'll get to that here in the later halves of this episode. Uh,
Well, I think let me jump on one point with your Martinook pick, Kyle.
Yep.
I hadn't thought about him, but you're right. And I think by adding Carrier to the other side of that lineup, it's going to allow Martinook not to have to do all the heavy lifting. So he's going to give himself the opportunity to put himself in scoring position. So I think that whole line, if we get production out of that third line, and from the scoring side, I mean, that's what you're looking for in a third line. I mean, Tampa did it 2 years ago with Gaudreau and the crew that they had there. Obviously they're all disbanded, but if we get production out of the third line, I agree that Marty is, the Marty party has to come back to the house and start scoring goals, not just generate energy. But if he can score goals with Carrier and Jordo, then we're gonna have a good run here. If the third line can produce like that.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Uh, Next question here. Does Rod's man-on-man pressure win us a cup? And I think a lot of people are asking this, and it's like, can we sustain that level of energy for an 82 game season and then a 4 round playoff run? I think it's possible. I think at the end of the season, everybody's going to need a huge IV bag and 3 months off in the sauna just to get back to somewhat of a playing condition
Mhm.
again. But I just kind of wanted to pose this question out because we've seen, I mean, Rod's in his 7th season with the Carolina Hurricanes, maybe his 8th. I could be wrong on the number, but I'm pretty sure it's his 7th season. It's his 7th season as a head coach in general too, because he went from being well, I shouldn't say, he was an assistant coach for a U16 hockey team and then went to the assistant coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, then went to the head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. So when we talk about Roddy, he's very young in his coaching career as well too. You see a lot of these coaches. I mean, how long has Ken Hitchcock been around for? It's almost feels like 40 years now. I feel
Yeah,
like he
like
was coaching in
Tortorella,
the
like
90s.
those guys.
Tortorella's been around since I mean, he won with Tampa in 2003. That was a cup that I mean, just think about how long these guys have been
Mhm.
around, and they gain the experience. So one more year with Roddy behind the bench, understanding more and more about the game, I think is going to be helpful. And I think we saw, like you said, last year in playoffs, felt like the first time he was able to make adjustments. We adjusted in that New York series. It was late. It was way too late.
Mhm.
We were already
Yeah.
down 3-0 by the
Yeah.
time he adjusted, but we go back and we make it a series. And I think that that's kind of the bigger thing. It's like, well, Roddy's system kind of it needs a tweaking. I'm just curious what you guys think that tweaking would be.
I know. Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those where people say it doesn't work until it does, kind of thing. So it hasn't worked. So yeah, I mean, he's either gonna stick with it, which I think is what he's gonna do, or they're gonna adapt like a hybrid system, kind of like Vegas does, or that kind of thing where
Tampa's
it's
the
man
big
on
one
man
with it. Yeah.
until the puck goes to the point, and then it's zone
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
So down low, it's man on man basically. But
Mhm.
if the forward from down low goes up to the top, then they hand that guy off to the winger,
Hmm.
and then the
Mhm.
D man falls back in. That creates issues too because then that's a 2-on-1 a pie. So and then
Mhm.
that D man's kind of just sitting there and trying to anticipate like a linebacker, like, hey, where's the run or where's the skating coming from? Like they're trying to anticipate that. So, I mean, that creates a whole nother situation as well. So,
Mhm.
I don't hate the man on man, but again, you need you need young guys to do it. Like you need
Yeah.
young, fast guys that have 100% energy all the
Yep.
time. You can't do it with these older guys, man. Like
Yep.
Burns can't play one on one forever,
No.
man. Like he just
No.
can't.
He did. Yeah. He can, and I
Him and
agree with
Stahl
you.
too. Like Jordan Stahl can't do
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Like
I think that's the biggest thing is that you have to have the players to manage that system,
yeah,
and I think he saw that towards the end of that playoff run last year is that he did recognize it, so that's a good thing. And to change that, to change the coverage, change the way they do it, because the high pressure, Kyle, it, and Cameron, it too. I mean, you've played under those systems with coaches that you've played for before. It's exhausting,
it's
and
demanding.
to
Yeah,
do it for an 82 game season, night in and night out, and then have a 16 game, well, really a 16 game playoff run potential, then or more than that, 30
could
was
be
it?
more.
Be
Yeah,
more than
because
that,
that
32,
16 wins.
7,
So
20, 28, 28 games potentially. So it's just like that's so exhausting that you have to be able to adjust and to slow your system down, slow the pace down, and allow yourself to last for 82 games. And and I think, the man on man is effective, but teams are getting so good at breaking down that coverage now. They're creating picks. They're creating, well, even though they don't get called, but they're creating misdirections, and they're playing it just like the NBA. I mean, there's a lot of misdirections. There's a lot of, breaking through the seams. There's people just going everywhere. It's like chaos. And, it's you hope that you can control the chaos, but for the most part, with the team that we have, especially on the defensive side, adding skating guys like Gossip Bear and Sean Miller, and guys that can actually skate.
Sean Miller.
What did I say?
Sean Walker.
Sean Walker, sorry.
Sean Miller.
Sean Miller.
Where'd I get
Ryan's
Saul from?
brother.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, but you get my point. It's that to run around in the D zone is we didn't have the ability to do that last year on a consistent basis long term. And I think that's the biggest thing with, and I like I said, Rod's willingness to change in the playoffs last year, albeit too late, it shows me that he recognized that we can't keep going down this path, and something has to change. And they did that. They did sort of a hybrid. We saw it in the, the game 4 of the Ranger series. They changed the way they covered in the D zone. And I think that's what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have the, we have the ability to do it. It's whether or not they can do it or feel comfortable doing it on a consistent basis. And I think we'll see what happens when they come out of training camp, and if they've changed it, Cam and you and I will see the first game, and whether or not they do it or not, we'll to be determined. But we'll see. But I think to answer your original question, Kyle, can we win under Rod's system? No, if we don't change. I don't think we can. I think the guys are they're dog tired by the time we get to the playoffs, and you can see it as we go through the playoffs. And I don't think they can. Now, if he changes and he has the adjustment, adds an adjustment, and we change the way we play, change the style, a little bit of the style we play as required, a sort of a read and react kind of thing, then yes, I think we can. But currently, just if we go solely man on man, it's going to be rinse and repeat.
Yeah. I think where Carolina really struggles is against teams with very active defense, especially in the man-on-man system, because you see it with New York. The first 3 games of the series with New York, all they were doing is because Artemi Panarin was playing against Jacob Slavin quite a bit in game 1 and game 2, just kind of the matchup that Carolina wanted. But all Panarin would do was just go sit at the blue line because he knew that Slavin had to cover him at the blue line. And then all of a sudden you have Adam Fox roaming free in the offensive zone because they have a cover now. Panarin's covering. If there's a turnover, yeah, it's probably going to lead to a good offensive scoring chance. But New York was good enough that they knew they could retain possession against the man-on-man and allow somebody like Adam Fox to get open, or allow Chris Kreider to get lost. I mean, you look at Kreider, that whole playoff series, he just kept getting lost. That was all it was.
Him and Zibanejad were just Zibanejad scored how many goals where he was just sitting in front of the net by himself, because our defense were up at the blue line and our forwards were trying to play defense in the D zone. So
that's where I struggle with Rod's system.
The issue.
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of handoff, or if you're like doing the man-on-man coverage, it has to be like a hybrid system where you could still do a bunch of pressure, but it needs to be more of a system where, okay, it's man-on-man. Obviously the guys without the puck, you're doing man-on-man. And then if the guy with the puck comes next to another guy and they're trying to flow around him or throw a pick, like, you need to switch off of them, basically. Don't allow them to throw that pick, because the guy that's following him, if he's trying to run into another guy, have that other guy switch to him so that when that guy goes behind him, he switches to him and he can put the pressure on him. And then if the guy that he's covering gets in his way, then it has to be called interference, so that's kind of that's the part of the issue I have. And I know they tried to do that. You hear them, we can hear it in the arena too sometimes when they're yelling switch, like they're yelling it, but they're not doing it fast enough. They're not that's the problem, is because they haven't been in that system for long enough. They've always been man on man for the last 6-7 years. So
well, the other thing too, let's not forget and I know we talked man on man, but in the ozone too, is that we have this hard forecheck, but we give up. We gave up the middle of the ice way too quickly. So I think not only getting a hybrid in the D zone, but I think we need to have a different look when we enter the zone when it comes to the forecheck, and not give up that middle of the ice. So that's going to be those are going to be the interesting things to see when we get our first look at these guys. Is anything changed when it comes to, we cover the walls. I mean, there's very little time that anybody comes up the wall on us. Very little.
Which works great against San Jose, but you
Right.
get a team
But
like New York with a
New
couple
York,
good defensemen that can move the puck, and all of a
exactly.
sudden it's right out the middle and through
Right.
you're
It's
right
right.
through the neutral zone.
It's up the ice, and they're stretching the ice, and they're just slashing to the neutral zone, and then you got an odd man rush the other way. So, so we'll see what happens in game one. But that's the other piece that I think has to change too, is the way we enter the zone on the forecheck, and not give up the middle of the ice.
Yeah. All right. Well, we actually have a very special guest that's going to be we recorded with him a couple days back, but we're super excited to bring him to you guys. But we are going to cut over to our recording with the equipment manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, Jorge Alves. Today's guest got his start with the Hurricanes in the 2003-2004 season as an assistant equipment manager, moving into the full-time equipment manager role in the 2012-2013 season. He fills a role that is vital to any organization and is often unnoticed and ungratified. I don't know if that's a word, but we're making it one today. Welcome to the show, Carolina Hurricanes equipment manager, Jorge Alves. How are we doing today, George?
Great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course. All right. I do want to hop right into it because I know you have a flight to get off to. So, first thing I do want to talk about, because it's probably one of the coolest stories in hockey history, your 7 seconds in Tampa. What was the emotion going into that, knowing that I'm actually going to make my NHL debut tonight?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was one of those things to where, talking about my timeline with the team, I had actually skated with the team for years before I even became an equipment manager. And I think at that point we were reaching about 15 years or so that I have been skating with the team, practicing and things like that, and filling in whenever I needed to. This was the first time that they were like, hey, we actually need you to put a jersey on and go out for the game. And I was like, okay. So it was cool and exciting, but at the same time, I'm like, I kind of do this all the time with the guys. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal until right at the end there. I was getting ready to start packing up and do my regular equipment manager duties. And, and coach kind of poked his head around and was like, get your gear on, go out there. And I was like, what? So, so in that aspect, it was neat, and just jumped out there, and I'm like, okay, like, this is awesome. This is cool. But then as soon as I got on the plane flying home, I'm getting all these text messages from actually former Hurricane players, from family members, from friends. And that's when it started hitting me. I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually pretty special. Like, obviously it was 7.6 seconds. I didn't face any shots, but just the mere fact that I got out there and was, in an NHL game was just amazing.
Hey,
yeah, not many people can say that.
I was gonna say not very many people can say they have an NHL game, whether it's 7 seconds or not, on their record. I know I wish I could have one. That'd be great.
It doesn't matter how long it was. You got in a game.
You got in a
That's
game,
right.
exactly.
Or whatever happened in the game, they just know you were in a game, an NHL game. So yeah.
One of the things that I thought was a pretty cool picture, and it really stuck in my brain is you're the backup goalie for that game, but at the same time, you're still the equipment manager. And they showed you backstage, so to speak, sharpening a guy's pair of skates with your equipment on. I was like, that doesn't happen very often, where, the guy's pulling double duty. He's sharpening skates and getting ready to go in the game. So not many NHL goalies can say that, quite honestly.
Well, I was lucky enough to also have a few years in the minors, jumping around. In most cases as an e-bug, an emergency backup, which kind of changed into getting signed some contracts here and there. But I do recall in those days of being an e-bug around even the minors, I always recall the fact that I wouldn't get a chance to play unless there was an injury. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, I got to be ready to play, but the chances of that happening are very slim. And I still got a job to do. I'm not going to let, behind here. If they still need me to sharpen skates, there's no reason for me not to go down the hallway and still pair of skates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it, in my mind. I was like, I still got a job I need to do.
Yeah. So in kind of launching off that, it's like, where did, where did George Alves make the decision that, that hockey was going to be not only a job, but a career? And where was that launching point for you when you decided saying, you know what, this is fun. Now I can make a living doing this. Where was that? And kind of walk us through that if you could.
Okay, so yeah, basically I started my hockey career in North Carolina after the military with NC State. Played with the club program there. And at the time, it was around 03, 04 lockout time that summer. I was skating around and, at the practice rink at the time, and they would tell me, they're like, hey, we need a goalie. I think it was like Gerber was coming in and he wasn't going to travel until they knew for sure they were going to have a season and things like that. So I ended up skating. And I had no idea what an equipment manager was at that point. I was just like, oh, okay, you got these guys running around helping the players out and things like. I'm like, this is pretty cool. So I did everything I can just to hang around, and I kind of befriended the equipment managers at the time then, and started learning a little bit about it. And I'm like, this is something that I kind of do anyways. I'm kind of a gear geek, and I like to mess around with my stuff, and I started learning all aspects of the equipment manager side, even though I was still focused on being a player and moving forward and in that side of things. But after a while, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, this is, as a player, the chance of being a professional athlete for a long, long period of time is slim to none. This is something which is by no means easy to do, and it is pretty physical as far as having to carry gear around, throwing bags around, trunks and things like that. But I kind of looked at it as okay, that's something maybe I can do after my career. I got my foot into the door by helping out with the visiting team locker room, things like that, helping on a day-to-day basis when I was around and not trying to chase the dream myself. And then one day I was in the minor leagues in the Southern Professional League out in Winston-Salem, and the GM came to me and said, hey, I heard you did some stuff with the Hurricanes as far as equipment stuff goes. We actually just lost our equipment manager. Would there be any interest in maybe helping out with that? And I said, I'm not sure if that's going to work really, considering I'm playing, but I guess. And after about a 3-hour talk with the GM and the owner of the team, we kind of got to an agreement that, okay, I could kind of try to swing both. Another reason why that worked out, the game that I went in and still ended up sharpening skates, because I had done that in the minors when I was starting to make a transition into the equipment side. Having children also was another thing. I'm like, there's only so long I can, keep doing this and chasing the dream. Now I'm having children and I've got to support a family and do those things. So that's kind of how the transition turned. Some people look at my experience with that, getting put in the game and stuff, and they think I was an equipment manager turned into an e-bug, which was actually the opposite. I was a goalie, kind of turned into an equipment manager, kind of saw how it could be a career of mine, and move forward doing so.
Now, Kyle, I have one piggyback off your first question. Yeah. You talked about your kids. Were your kids old enough to really get a feel for when you went into a game?
No, they were still little. They kind of understood a little bit. Not only that, but my wife threw a party and things like that.
Why not? For sure.
All the kids were around and they kind of understood it, kind of didn't understand it. As they got older, I remember my kids talking about, I have one in high school, one still in middle school, but when they were both in elementary and middle school, they would come to me and be like, Dad, why are my classmate has a picture of you on their phone? Like, what's the deal with, like, they started realizing, they're like, oh, okay, something special had happened. Where they were small enough to know it happened, but not really understand.
Yeah.
Started getting older and started, it's on the internet and things like that. Now they're like, what, they start asking more and more questions, and they're like, are these kids acting like this? Like, why are they like freaked out that?
Yeah, he's just dad. He's just dad, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of explain it. You know, I guess they've just been around. They've been around Carolina Hurricanes hockey their whole lives. They've been in the locker room. They've been around the players. They've been so to them, it doesn't have kind of that oomph that
Mhm.
you know somebody else might have. They just used to it, I guess. So
Yep.
it's that big of a deal, I guess. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's interesting to kind of see now that they're older and they're understanding and they're like, oh, okay, so you did play in a game, but now my son plays and he's like, Dad, yeah, that was just 6, 7 seconds. Like,
Yeah, big deal.
yeah, but yeah, it is what
Now,
it is.
Yeah.
now I do have a question. So I have worked at pro shops and stuff like that in the past where I'm sharpening skates, doing repairs, all that kind of fun stuff. How do you get, I guess this is, how do you get so quick at doing the turnaround between going from city to city, back to back nights where you're having to not only, make repairs to equipment, you're having to fix jerseys, you're having to sharpen skate. I mean, I remember we had, 5, 6, 7 skate sharpens in front of it. And I'm like, I'm swamped. I can't do anything else. I couldn't imagine having to do that for 25 guys at a given time.
Yeah, teamwork. We have a team of us. There's 4 of us that are the equipment managers. 3 of us travel, and it's teamwork. It's communication. We have responsibilities. We kind of come up with a game plan and execute. And that's one of the things. Like right now is actually one of our toughest times a year, just because it's right before training camp. We have lots of players coming to town right now. Not only our main roster, but also our prospects and our minor league guys and things like that. So we have an abundance of guys that are, rolling in this time of year too. New players that have never been with us, outfitting them and things like that. So it's all about just the teamwork, communication, and obviously for me, this is year 21, 22 that I've been around the team and have understood equipment managing and what it takes and everything. So I've got experience now, but it evolves, it changes. The players change. They're becoming younger, not necessarily more needy, I wouldn't say, but it's a different
Mhm.
aspect than what it used to be. These guys are very health oriented, so they need their shakes and their this, that, and the other, which we have strength coach that takes care of that stuff. But that just means more trunks and stuff for the road. We never used to have a strength and conditioning trunk, for instance. Now we have that we carry supplements, we carry all types of things. So it evolves, it changes. Gosh, I remember when the truck we used to have was a lot smaller, and Skip Cunningham, who just retired a few years back, he came over with Hartford and he was telling me we used to keep all the gear in one van, like a white van. And now we've got this big, F650, and it's a huge box, and we fill that thing to the rim. Like there's no more room. And some teams are heavier than others, but I project probably 10 years, 15 years from now, we're probably going to need tractor trailers, like semi.
Oh my.
Demand goes up and you need more and more stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
to
do you
piggyback
do you guys support the visiting teams with equipment side, or is it just you just take care of the Canes?
No, so we travel. We travel from city to city, just like the visiting teams do as well. But we have, or every city has 2 locker room attendants and a truck driver. So the truck driver will go pick up their gear or help them unload the plane, pick up their gear, drive them over. So that's basically what we do when we leave. We'll load up the plane. We'll get to the city we're going to. We'll meet up our truck liaison with the visiting team or with the home team. Start loading up the truck. The team, the players, the staff, and everything, they'll all go to the hotel while we load up in the truck, head over to the arena, unload, get everything ready for the next day. Usually takes us about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Sometimes depending on New York City and places like that, it's usually pretty lengthy time to get to the arena, Then once you get there, it's still about an hour, hour and a half to unload, and then to get back to the hotel. But yeah, we have that one guy, that liaison or locker room attendants that help us, that have everything there for us. And
Mhm.
there's also standardized lists of stuff that every team is required to have for the visitors, whether, be toiletries and towels and glove dryers. And it's just a long list of standardization of equipment and stuff that we have to supply for every team. And in return, they supply to us as
Right.
well. So
Yeah. To kind of go back a little bit, you said that everybody has a role when they get to the into the visiting locker room. Are those roles kind of shifting day by day, or are you pretty much doing the same role over and over and over again?
well, a lot of time, I mean, we all help each other out with different things.
Yeah.
It is right now, the crew we have, um, whenever we go to a city, it's kind of known that I'm going to start. For instance, I'm the guy that sets up the whole locker room. So before the truck even starts getting unloaded, I get off the truck immediately. I've got all the name tags for all the stalls, and I head straight to the locker room. Go to the locker room, start putting name tags up in their stalls, figure out who goes where and all that stuff. So that way, as soon as I'm done with that, we already got the first cart rolling in with the guys of bags, and they start throwing bags where they need to go, start throwing, medical stuff in the medical room, and sticks go in the stick room. And then you start unpacking things. We've got a massage therapist that also comes out and helps us out unpack. He almost always goes straight to the change room and starts unpacking the shoes and sandals. So, we do this so much that it becomes second nature, and it's like bang, bang, bang. So what seems to be a whole heck of a lot of stuff, which it is, we can get it knocked out within an hour, hour and a half. Now, not to say that sometimes when we're going to a city, there's another event going on. Maybe we can't get in right away. Maybe we have to wait until after a concert or after a basketball game or whatever. There's sometimes roadblocks like that we have to deal with in loading in, because sometimes they use the same locker room we do. Other cities, the locker room is dedicated just for hockey. Other cities, it's not. So that's all things that we communicate with the truck driver, the liaison that's picking us up, and making sure what the availability at the arena is, what we need to do. If we need to go to the hotel first, have dinner, hang out for a little bit until the basketball game's over, and then go meet over there at midnight. And after the basketball team's out and everything's been cleaned, now we can unpack everything and have it ready. So when we walk in the door the next morning, everything's already out, set for practice or pregame skate or whatever it is.
Gotcha. And then you were so you're saying that you're the first person that walks in with the name tags. Is there any order to which those go up in the locker room? Does Rod have any specific way he likes his kind of locker room set up, or is it just kind of based off of the home locker room?
Yeah, I try to base it off the home locker room as much as possible. That's kind of the tricky part. I don't know if the other guys just don't want to do that, because you may have a situation where the room's not a square. Boston, for instance, new locker room, it's got some weird edges and turns and things like that around the locker room. So you can't always do it that way. And sometimes you might have a guy that's like, oh, why'd you put me in the corner or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think I think our guys would rather not get that flack. And I'm like, I'll take it. Like, that's fine. Like, I know I have to do what I have to do, and I have to put people where they need to go and things like that. So it's not that big of a deal, but yeah, that's why I have that responsibility of making sure I put certain people where they belong. And when I say that, I mean, like, the D-men stay together on one wall, basically. The goalies will have a certain area where they need. You don't want to put a goalie in a corner next to another guy because he's got those long leg pads. And once he lays those leg pads down, then the other guy can't even put his skates. Little things like that I have to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, like I said, around the league, I already know what the room looks like. I already know the setup, and they go right where they went last year or last game or whatever. So it's not that bad.
Gotcha. My next question is going to be, and this is going to be a little bit of a fun one. Don't feel free to, we can cut this out if need be, but who has the worst visiting locker room in the NHL? Because I hear a lot that it's us, but I don't know if that's a fact or not.
Matter of fact, that is why it's getting renovated as we speak. So ours, it's pretty funny that they've talked about ours being one of the worst. Now, there are factors that come into play. The fact that the team has to come out of the corner, go across the ice to the bench, that's considered a locker room thing. There are other teams in the league that do that as well. Winnipeg, for instance, decent locker room. The setup's okay. The change room is one of the worst in the league. It's just really tight, but it's like a 3-mile walk to get to the ice, and then you got to cross the ice to the bench. So those little things, you're like, oh. And for us personally, which it doesn't really affect anybody else but the equipment staff, we also range or gauge where the truck gets unloaded as opposed to where the actual locker room is. So if we have to unload at the loading dock and walk completely around this huge arena to get to the locker room on the other side, to us, that's a big, so like Montreal, the truck actually backs up right outside the door of the locker room.
That's nice.
I don't think any other team, I'm pretty sure there's no other team in the league that can do that. And for us, that's like, comes right off the truck and you almost throw it right to the guy's locker. Like it's awesome. Now it is a walk across the ice, but that definitely helps it a lot. So those are the factors where some people might just, or the player might have a different, aspect. Like our locker room showers, our visiting locker room showers is probably one of the biggest things that the guys don't like, because they're kind of enclosed and small. And, for me, it's not a big deal. For me, it's, can the truck get super close to the locker room for unload, or walking across the ice, or what? Those are our factors. The players have factors. So
you want to get to the hotel and go to bed. You don't want to be walking around the rink all night. So
yeah, exactly. So so it's tougher in that aspect. But so if you see any, surveys or anything else, you got to really see, okay, did this come from players or did this come from staff? Or who did it come from? And in some cases, even the coaching staff, Chris Huffiner, video coach, in some cases, the locker room's wonderful, beautiful, but then the coach's room and the video room is like just a bad situation, or just isn't the most comfortable, or isn't very convenient or whatever. And to him, that's the worst locker room. You know what I mean? So it just depends.
Depends on who you're asking, I guess.
Yeah.
The other one I wanted to ask you about, Arizona Coyotes, ex-former NHL team. How was that playing at Mullet Arena? What was that atmosphere like? How was that locker room? Because it seemed like it was an awfully far walk to get to and from the practice arena.
Yeah, not as far of a walk as Winnipeg. Like we
really?
Yeah, surprisingly enough. Now it is kind of weird because the arena, the locker rooms were built outside of the arena, and then they had these tents that it was probably, I don't know, a 10-20 foot walk between building to building, but you went under these tents, and the tents had walls, and it wasn't a big deal. And we're in Arizona, so it's not like it's freezing cold out or bad. Like, so honestly, that wasn't a bad setup at all. They had a great gym. The locker room was arguably kind of along the lines of our home locker room. You know what I mean? Like, it was big, it was spacious, it was, they had turf outside so the guys can work out with. They had a good gym. It was the change room, plenty of, space to change. Like, it wasn't bad at all. And then, obviously it's not your typical NHL building arena, as far as that goes, but it was kind of neat to go back to an arena like that and be like, oh, this is kind of nice and quaint. And,
right. Like back to your ECHL days and the SP days with, with the, 5,000 seat barn.
Yeah, it was perfect. I was like, oh, this is pretty nice. But, and then you go to Detroit and it's a huge barn, and, it's a different beast.
Yeah.
Now, have you gotten, and I don't know how this works, so I excuse my ignorance in this sense. Do you guys get like a layout of the new Utah arena or anything along those lines? Or is it when you show up the first time, that's when you get to know the arena?
Pretty much. From what we understand, the layout is going to be similar to, I think, Seattle. And Seattle, the layout there, they just redid, golly, what other rink did they just, oh, the New York Islanders. So their locker room was designed by the same, I guess, company or whatever. So it's very similar. So we kind of have an idea already of what it could look like or whatever. But like I said, anytime you go to a new building or a new facility or a new city, all of a sudden you got to kind of relearn things. So it happened in Arizona when they moved to the other location, and it is what it is. You get used to it. You go there enough times, you get used.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned earlier about this is a busy time for you guys getting ready for the training camp and all the new guys coming in, all the existing guys coming back into town. So if you take a second, walk us through what does the summer look like for George? Are you full on equipment manager, all day, every day during the summer? Or is there sort of a gap in there where you kind of, you don't have a lot going on and then all of a sudden it ramps up again?
Yeah. Well, it used to be a lot different for, 10 years or so. We were making the playoffs. And so it was, we were done in around April, beginning of April. And then, there was really no development camps. There was no, equipment sale, or Canes Day like we have now. So now we're going deeper in the playoffs. That obviously extends the season for us. Then almost immediately after, it's like, okay, development camp's right around the draft is right around the corner, which means development camp's right around the corner. Development camp takes a couple of weeks to start getting prepared for, getting ready, seeing who's coming, getting gear for, and then our equipment sale, which everybody likes to go the summer, the Canes, they've changed it so many times. We used to have the development camp at the same time as the equipment sale, kind of made it like the Canes Carnival thing, but it changes up. So
yeah,
got to prepare for that. That's, we have a lot of used equipment, a lot of stuff gets put on the floor, and that's us. We do that. There's 4 of us, and we may get help here and there, but it takes a lot of work. And so we do that. Once that's done, I may have a week or 2, and then we're off to wherever our league meetings are. We have Equipment Managers Association, and we have league meetings that we go to for a week, for continuing education, to meet up with all the reps. At one time, it's your typical convention, but with cool hockey stuff. Like we get to go see all the vendors and discuss all the different the new stuff that's coming out. Now there's a lot of automated skate sharpeners and things like that. So a lot of companies are getting in on that, all the cut resistant stuff. Nowadays it's a big thing for neck guards and wrist guards and things like that. So that's
pretty busy.
Yeah.
So summer you don't take the summer off. You keep going.
No, it's year round. And it's pretty funny because like even Freddie Anderson playing for Team Denmark, qualifying for the Olympics, I fielded a lot of phone calls with him over the summer as he was getting ready to play for that. Ship this out. Can you order this for me? Can you know what I mean? Like it's pretty constant. And as of recent, during the summer, we've had a lot of player movement. So one guy might not re-sign and end up somewhere else. Well, now we got to go in, pack up their stuff, ship it off for them if they don't take it with them. The new guys coming in, call them up, contact them, make sure that we're ordering what we need to order for them, send out jerseys, socks, because they're Carolina Hurricanes now. We want them practicing wherever they are as a Carolina Hurricane. And then even mentioning that with them practicing wherever they are, we now have a facility that can hold our old practice facility could not really hold that many guys. on the off season for, training and things like that. Plus, not many guys would stick around anyways. But now there is a solid base here. Our new practice facility, they get a code. They can come and go as they please, use the sauna, things like that, work out. And then once ice becomes available for captain skates and stuff like that, there's a lot of guys around. They go out and skate. So it's pretty consistent throughout the year. Like, once the season ends, it's get everybody packed up and ready to go. Inventory, this, that, and the other, get ready for the next season. But before you know it, it's like, hey, we're here. Like, I feel like I just blinked my eye and here we are already. There's it's funny. There's 2 days I dread in the hockey season. That's if we get knocked out of the playoffs, that day we get knocked out. That's what I dread. And the day right after Labor Day, because that's usually when a majority of the guys start showing up. And like, oh man, like, so we've got probably 25, 30 guys already skating and working out at the practice facility. And we're a couple of weeks out from training camp. And it's been like that for about a month and a half.
That's
Not
awesome.
that, but it's been, guys start trickling in little by little. Families that have kids, they've got to come in, start school, things like that. So, so it's actually a good thing and something that's evolved over the years, where we didn't really have that in the past.
Yep.
But now we've got young guys too, prospects that want to come to Raleigh, stay in the area, work with our strength coaches, work with our medical staff, work with the equipment staff, so we can get them ready, so they have everything they need before training camp starts. Training camp's not, get in shape and get ready to go anymore. That's what they're doing now. That's what cabin skates are. That training camp is get the team solidified so we can go, hit the ground running and start playing immediately. It's not.
Yeah, no, it used to be that you just showed up to training camp to get in shape, but if you don't come into training camp in shape, we're in a world of hurt.
There are guys testing right now before training camp even starts. And it's like, yeah, so, they're now working year round to make sure they're physically prepared and ready to play. And we're working year round to make sure they have everything they need for that. So the more prepared you are earlier, the better it is. Hit the ground running once the season starts.
I mean, it sounds like for you and the players, everybody, the more you're prepared, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. George, one final one. I know you have to get going here. I just want to, one last fun one. Your favorite memory so far working for the Carolina Hurricanes?
Well, other than the 7.6 seconds.
Yeah, let's leave that one off the table.
Gosh, there's been so many. That's one of the things about my job, right? Like, I can't work a 9 to 5 and go and experience that, even in the playoffs when you have the crowd around you and you're part of something that's bigger. Like, it's a different feeling. It's hard to pinpoint. I'm trying to think. Geez. I mean, anytime we went around in the playoffs, obviously, I was also around during the 2006 Cup run. That was special. Yeah, I'd probably say that was probably the most, just to be able to be around for that, and be in the room afterwards and hold the cup. And I got a Stanley Cup ring as well. That to me was huge. At that time, I was considered part-time. And now that makes it even more special that I want to be able to do it as a full-time employee, Yeah, I'd say that was probably as 2006 being there for the Cup.
Well, we can't thank you enough for taking the time out to meet with us
absolutely.
today. And on behalf of all the Canes fans that are out there listening, I know they want to thank you for all that you guys do for the team, because without you guys doing the hard work that you guys do, they wouldn't be able to play the game that they play at the level that they play at. So thank you for doing what you do. And this has been another section of Behind the Canes. Okay. Moving right back into it. A great interview with George. We thank him so much for coming on. He said he was going to come on a couple more times throughout the season, so be on the lookout for those. We're going to get a little bit more goofy with him the next couple times. I wanted to make sure that he felt comfortable first before we got a little bit too crazy. But anyways, moving right along. Who do you guys think is going to be your biggest surprise this year? Who do you think is going to make that biggest jump up from even last year? Like it could be a Sebastian Aho. It still could be a Seth Jarvis. Who's going to make that next step into being like, oh, okay, like he's definitely made a jump from where he was.
Ooh, wow. I mean, I think that you could go to it with a handful of players. And the guy that I hope makes the biggest jump is going to be Kokniemi. I hope he makes the biggest jump. I don't know that I hope he does. He's the one I want to see make the biggest jump. I think though, I
Oh
think
no, you got one answer. So I'm not stealing. You're not
okay.
stealing all the players again in the first
Okay.
half.
So,
Hold on. So you got
I'll,
Kokaniemi. There we go.
I'll say Kokniemi. I hope that he has a breakout year, and I hope, you know, he's the biggest surprise from the way he ended last year.
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's gonna be Svechnikov is gonna because he's finally like last year all he was doing in the offseason was rehabbing an ACL tear.
Yep.
And then he gets thrown into, just going back right into basically practice for a week or two and then right back into games. Kind of had a slow start, started to get some heat, got injured again, was out for another month. Like he had the injury bug last year. So I think having a full off season, healthy, being able to train, I really think he's going to be. I think he's really going to have a crazy year this year. I think there's no way he has a worse year than he did last year. I don't, for sure. And again, I think the part that was worse for him was that he was just injured for a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
year and the
Mm-hmm.
off season too. I mean, you look at a lot of these guys that come off like those big injuries and stuff, and they go into their following season where they have a full summer to be healthy. They say how underrated it is with hey, this summer, this time last summer, I was sitting on my couch, in a in a machine that's allowing my knee to bend. Just
Mm-hmm.
whereas this summer I'm training and working out and on the ice and doing drills, and it's a lot different. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
have months to prepare, and I think he's going to come in with a lot of energy, and he's going to be the guy that I think this year is going to be. He's going to be a replacement for, I guess, the Gensel that we lost. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to replace him. He's going to be the guy that puts up the numbers that Gensel put up last year for us. So,
Yeah. My biggest surprise this year, I'm actually going to segue this into the next question too. But I think my biggest surprise this year, it's gonna be Mr. Pyotr Kochetkov. I think I think he needed a little bit of confidence. I think early on in the year we weren't playing very well and he wasn't playing very well, and it was a struggle for both. The issue is he didn't really have a backup because Freddie was out and Auntie was about as worse, or just as worse as he, or just as bad as he was at the start last year. I bid a farewell to Auntie Ranta. I hope he does, good things. He's going back over to Europe to go play a couple more seasons. I have a feeling over there, probably Finland, a little bit closer to his hometown. But he said he's done playing hockey in North America. But just a little bit of we'll hash it on him. Auntie Ranta was crucial that year. I forget it was, or we made it to Eastern Conference Finals. We beat the
year
Bruins
before
in the
last.
first round, and we beat the Islanders in the second round. Freddie didn't come back until halfway through that Islanders series, and I think the way Auntie Ronsa played in that Bruins playoff run was second to that he might have had the best performance out of the starting goalies in that run, because Boston was all over us at times. There were times where it should have been 7-0 game, and all of a sudden Auntie Ronta was making these split saves that I've never seen. Now it might have caused a little bit of tweaking or anything along those lines. I'm not quite sure what fell off last year. Maybe it was just a lack of confidence, but I think Kochetkov, to kind of circle this point back, Kochetkov has the capability to be a genuine superstar goaltender in this league. I think with a little bit more poise and a little bit more confidence in the net, which we started to see a lot more towards the end of the year. There weren't so many crazy, he was trying to, do the crazy flying poke check unless it was absolutely needed, but he wasn't trying to be sporadic. He seemed to calm his game down a lot towards the latter half of the season, and the numbers started to show. I mean, that second half of the season, his numbers were right up there with some of the best. I mean, if it wasn't for Freddie having the numbers in the last 10 games of the season that he did, I think Kochetkov would have been the starting goalie going into playoffs. And I think maybe a little bit of a different story going up against the likes of an Igor Shesterkin. Because, I mean, I think Carolina needs a goalie that can win them a series. I think that's the biggest thing. You look at any playoff winning team outside of Vegas and Colorado, which just had juggernaut offenses. But outside of those two teams, you need a goalie to take you far. I mean, look at Tampa. They had Andrei Vasilevsky. Look at New York, who's been going far the last couple of years. They've had Igor Shesterkin. Look at Florida, who just won. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky's been playing lights out in playoffs. And you need that level goaltender to win you a cup. And I think that Kochetkov has every capability to do that. I think with the right amount of games this year and the right amount of confidence, and if he gets off to a good start, we might see one of the best seasons we've seen so far out of him. But I do want to kind of rotate us right into the next question, which is, how should the goalie shake out this year? I know, Cam, you mentioned earlier that Piotr played so good that he earned himself the backup spot this year. I think that he's played so well that he's earned himself the starting role, and that's partially due to the fact that I don't think Freddie can play more than 20 games in a season without getting hurt. So you kind of relying on one kid to carry the load if that's the case. I mean, how do you see the goaltending kind of games played shaking out this year? Because I know we cover this, I feel like, every time we talk, but I think it's a very crucial piece to it, because if we don't have Freddie healthy, who's the other goalie this year?
Well, I think you made, your kind of synopsis of it kind of answered the question. Is Freddie gets hurt. So even we'll call Freddie. I mean, I still call Freddie the starter, but Peter's going to play more games just inherently because Freddie's going to get hurt. So it's going to happen. Like, he's going to get hurt. Peter's going to have to carry the load, which he can. Yep. He proved last year he could, which again earned him the backup spot, I guess, is if you want to call it. But Freddie's still the starter. Kochetkov's still the backup. However, Kochetkov will end up playing more games than Freddie because Freddie will get hurt. So, I mean, we can call him the starter, I guess, but I think the preference, and it always has been, and it will be continued this year, that if Freddie's healthy, he's going to be in the rotation and maybe play more games if he's in the rotation, but he's not going to be in the rotation because he's going to get hurt at some point. So it's just one of those where, okay, if he stays healthy the whole year, I don't know how it's going to shake out. Like, I don't know how many games he's going to end up playing. I don't know how many games Kochetkov's going to get. Just depends on how, but Rod's going to prefer Freddie over Kochetkov still, I think, and he's still going to be the starter. But again, like you said, I think inherently Freddie's going to get injured, unfortunately, and Kochetkov's going to end up carrying the load. I think Kochetkov could play probably 40 games this year, probably 35 to 40 games at least.
You think Freddie's making 41 games this year?
Well, that's what I mean. Is like I'm saying.
I think he's playing 15, 20.
In a
Spencer
perfect
Martin
world,
as
if
the
he
backup.
doesn't get
I forgot
injured,
we had Martin.
Yeah, so we have Spencer Martin, who would be the backup to Kochetkov, when Freddie gets injured. So I think that's more of it than anything. And, I mean, he did stay, I mean, other than that clotting issue last year, I mean, obviously he only played, 15 games last year, 20 at most.
Well,
so I think he plays more than that for sure. I think I could see him playing close to 30 games this year, but I do think Kochetkov carries more of the load for sure.
I do too. And I think I've said this before in offline, but I think if you were to give Freddie 25, 30 games and allow him, because you saw it last year, he didn't have any injuries last year. He had the clotting issue, so his body has had almost a full season and a half almost to recover through the summer, and then he played a few games and then was out until second half of the season. And then he came in, he played really well. I mean, when Freddie plays well, he's
locked in. Yeah. When he's locked in, he's locked in.
I mean, like, you go back to, last year, you say, Freddie against the Rangers, and we should have gone Kochetkov, which we probably should have. But I think the thing with Freddie is, I look at the Florida series the year before. I mean, if he didn't play the week that we played, it's not even close. I mean, it wasn't close to begin with, but he kept the games from being 10-0. And I think the team in front of us, when you get to that, because it seems like it's a scenario that we get to the third round of the playoffs, and then the team in front of them falls apart. And I think that's the difference in whether or not Kochetkov in net could make a difference. And I don't know that I know the answer to this question. In that scenario, does Kochetkov make a difference, or does Freddie make a difference in a game like that? Because Freddie's shown it against Florida. He didn't show it against the
Well,
Rangers.
he got swept in the Florida series.
I know that, but what I'm saying is that he was the best player on the ice.
Yes, for Carolina, but he still got beat by the goalie in the other
I
net.
know, that's what I'm saying.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is that if he can perform at those levels, the team in front of him didn't perform.
Yeah, but just to counter your point, the best player on Florida's ice that series was Bobrovsky. So he got beat by the goalie. So we can't, that's where you get to those late rounds of playoffs. That's what happens is you get beat by goalies. Like a goalie can steal you a series. And I don't think Freddie can steal us a series. That's just how I feel about it. I think that in order for us to win a full 4 series in the playoffs, there's going to be a series that something's got to kind of, we need a goalie that's going to be able to say or go up against Bobrovsky and be like, you know what? If you're only going to allow 1 goal, I'm going to allow 0. You're only going to allow 2 goals. I'm only allowing 1. Like that level of competency and goaltending, that's what wins you cups. Like I said, unless you have an absolute offensive juggernaut, but even like Vegas, they had good goaltending in playoffs. They were, I mean, who's the big guy?
Aiden Hill.
Aiden Hill had like a 9. It wasn't great, but he had like a 910 goal, like save percentage save percentage with like a 258 goals against. It's not terrible. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. I mean, it's still competent goaltending. They just had so much offensive firepower that it didn't make a difference. Same thing with Colorado.
Colorado's the same way.
But you look at the Eastern Conference now. I mean, we're going to have to play a top end level goalie. We're either going to play Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, Swayman now. Swayman's, I mean, he was lights out last year. If Boston can re-sign him.
See. I was about to say, he's holding out right now. He's not
Boston
practicing.
Can
he's
re-sign
not
him.
doing anything at this point, holding out for a new contract.
Well, because Boston's offering him like 5.5 for 6 years.
Insanity. Like Boston is actually, they're fumbling
They're
the
cheap.
bag, as they call it.
They're cheap. That's
anyway.
Yes, but
we'll get into the Metro and the East and stuff here in just a second. But I don't disagree with you. I think out of the two, Kochetkov we know what Freddie's ceiling is. We've seen it. We know what it is.
Freddie needs
we
offense.
don't know what Kochekhov's ceiling is yet. And I think until you put him in that situation where he can show what his ceiling is, you'll never really know. So, I think this time last year I would have disagreed with you and been like, we need to ride Freddie. He's the steady guy. We need to go with him. I honestly, either one of them, I probably prefer Kochetkov now for sure. I think he has shown and he's proven that last year that he was the guy. And we said this before the year started, like he had to have a good year. Like he had to prove that he could play in the league for the Canes, not to just say, you know what, we're just going to dish him. Like, and he proved it. And he's definitely earned the backup. And, I definitely think he'll play more games this year. But yeah, I definitely think his ceiling has not been seen yet. I don't think. I think he's going to get so much better over the next 2 years. We're going to see him explode into one of the best goaltenders in the East for sure.
And that's kind of where I guess the point I wanted to get to is that's where I see him now. I think this is the year that all of a sudden, we start with the rotation of 1-1-1-1. Maybe Freddie gets hurt. Maybe Freddie doesn't. I think Kochetkov has every capability of just becoming the 1A guy. He's right now the 1B because they're going to do the 1-1 swap rotation.
I think so too.
I think Kochetkov has every capability of being that 1A guy where game 1 of playoffs comes around and it's not, even if Freddie's full healthy, I think they might still go to Kochetkov. I think he's got every capability this year to do that. And I think that's what ends up happening. That's my bold prediction for the season.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a Swayman Allmark situation in Carolina where they kind of go back and forth. And again, who knows? I mean, I don't disagree. I want the kid to play more because I think he's the future. Freddie's not. Freddie's a great goaltender, but Freddie's only good for 25 games.
And he's getting older.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And he's a big guy, and he's a big guy too. And he's not a slight guy. So he has tendency to get injured. And I think
Mhm.
if you give him 25 games a year, he is the best backup you'll ever have in the NHL
Yeah.
at 25 games a season. And
I
he'll
mean,
win, and he'll win you 24 of them.
he's the best starter at 25 games. If you
Yeah.
give every starter at 25 games a year, he's right up there with the best of them.
Yeah,
I
I
really
agree.
do. I fully believe that. But yeah, like you said, it's just he can't, and that's kind of the issue we've had since Cam Ward left
Mhm.
is, you haven't had a goalie that can really just run the gauntlet and go and be the guy for, I mean, hell, how many games did Shesterkin play for New York last year in the regular season?
I think
I
it was
mean, did he
61.
play, which is low? He
Yeah.
usually plays all 80 or 82. Like he
I-
usually plays every game. I think the year
Yeah.
before he played 82 games.
No,
Like,
they had some sort of rotation. It was not. I think the most games he's played in a season has been 63, and that was with Jonathan Quick as his backup. You can't play.
Mhm.
I mean, you put a goalie in all 82. I think Vasilevsky is the most recent one to almost be close, and I think he had 71 games in a season.
Yeah, because I was going to say back in the day that Marty Brodeur and guys like that, they would go 70 odd games, and that's all that. But the game was different back then. It
Yeah.
wasn't
it's a
as
lot different now, for
taxing.
sure.
Yeah,
Most
goaltending
teams, most
is
teams have a rotation of two goalies that they go to, and
Yeah.
they tend to play their starter only like
Mhm.
40 to 50 games generally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they figure
Well,
they're paying the money to do it, so they're going to do it. So
yeah, and then on top of that, it's your pressure going into playoffs. I mean, you see it. There's very few goalies that can play a long season of hockey and then go into playoffs and still be that good.
Mhm.
I mean, outside of Vasilevsky, Shish- and maybe Shesterkin, outside of those two guys, Bobrovsky plays half the games. I mean, Alex Lyon was leading them into playoffs 2 years ago. I mean,
Mhm.
he and I forget who the backup was last year, but they were getting quite a few games themselves. So I think for
Stolars, I think.
Stolars, yep, that was the backup. Was he?
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, he
But
was a backup for
Yeah.
Florida last year. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, we're gonna take a quick look around the metro and then we'll leave you guys with this episode. But um I just kind of wanted to get your guys' rundown on who you think would be the top 3 or 4 teams in the metro because it's always going to be a fight for the wild card spot. But this year, I feel like the Atlantic has the 2 wild card spots locked up.
Mhm.
I think there's some good teams in the Atlantic division, so I'm curious to see who you guys' top 3 are in the Metro.
Well, I'll jump into this one because I think it's probably going to be the same 3 for all 3 of us, honestly. I think it's going to be Carolina, the Rangers, and the Devils. I think those 3 teams, I guess with the Islanders being an honorable mention, but I think those 3 teams are they going to be the 3 that are going to come out of the Metro. And I would 100% agree that that the Metro is only going to get 3 teams and the 2 wild cards come out of the Atlantic. But I do think that Carolina, do they win the division? Probably not. I think the Rangers end up winning, and I think the Devils. I think we end up coming in third, honestly.
I do too.
So I think it's Rangers, Devils, and us. That's the way the Metro is gonna shake out.
Yeah. No, I'll actually, Kyle, we'll let you go next. I'll go
Yeah,
last.
I got same 3 teams. I just got it shaped up a little bit differently. I think Devils coming first. I think they got too much offensive firepower now. I don't think they have it to go deep in the playoffs. They're not big
Mhm.
enough. They're not strong enough. But I think that for regular season play, they're going to be a lot like Toronto. Um, the big thing is everyone thinks that it's Jacob Markstrom that's going to make the difference for that team, and I don't see it.
I don't either.
He's not been that good for a while. Yeah, he's been playing on Calgary, but it's not like Calgary was a bad team through 2 3 years ago. I mean, they had good programs, and he was still below a 9.0 save percentage. He looked like a wet paper bag almost. And I
Mhm.
think New Jersey fans are expecting that to solve their goaltending issue, and I think that we're going to see probably 15 games into the season. He's probably not even the starter. He's probably in a rotation situation with whoever they have there. I think it's I can't remember who's over there. Varlamov. No, it's not Varlamov. It's it was the old Capitals guy. Anyways, but I think that the Rangers probably finish up second, and I think Carolina takes up that third spot as
Mhm.
well too. But I think the Devils do it because their offense and their decor is really good, not because their goaltending's been anything exceptional. I think that's where they get hurt in playoffs.
Mhm. Yep. So Cam, what are your three? I'm assuming
Yeah.
you got the same three.
Sorry, yeah, my headphones are about to die here. So,
Oh,
but yeah, no, my three are still those top three for sure. I think the Devils got a lot better this year. Obviously adding, a guy like Pesci, and then they've kind of fixed their number one goalie. They haven't really had a number one goalie for, a while,
I
really.
don't think he's even a number one.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't. Yeah, and even he's a question mark at this point. But I think those, I do. I still think the Rangers are too good at this point. They
Mhm.
didn't lose a lot of pieces in the offseason, so they still have kind of the same core group coming back. They still got the
They're
better
missing
goalie.
Roslovic, man.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't think they're going to miss him too much, but
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting. I definitely think the Rangers coming first, and I think it'll be kind of a fist fight for number two between the Canes and the Devils. Kind of who comes in there. It just depends if the Devils can stay healthy, really, because they had a
Yeah.
lot of injuries last
Yeah.
year. They had
Well,
d-
Dougie will be back. So
well, elite for now. He seems to he's kind of the same way as Freddie. He just gets injured a lot.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see how he kind of turns out. But yeah, him and Pesci will be back together. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that works out for them. But yeah, I think their D's really good. They got really good offensive weapons, and
Mhm.
I just think that the Metro's going to be. It's still going to be tight. I don't think one team's going to run away with it,
Yeah.
but I definitely think out of, like you said, the wild cards are going to come out of the Atlantic,
Mhm.
assuming that Boston and Swayman can
Mhm.
get their issues worked out.
I
That's
think
the only question mark I have, because if
yeah.
if Swayman goes somewhere else, Boston ain't a playoff team. I promise you that. They're not going to make the playoffs. I don't think
Not
they
not
are. If they
because they
lost
lost
Swayman
both.
and
Yeah.
Olmark, yeah, they're
I
not going to make the
still don't
playoffs.
get how
So
you get rid of Allmark and then
Not
cheap
without a
your
guarantee
and
of
then
Swayman
lowball
having a
Swayman.
contract in
So
place.
cheaping your
crazy.
way into a contract with Swayman. I think that's absolutely asinine. I don't know what Sweeney's thinking, but who knows? Well,
I don't
maybe
think it's Sweeney.
yeah, well, maybe not.
I think it's the Fenway Sports Group or
Yeah.
whatever,
Well, I think-
whoever the owner is. I don't
yeah.
think it's even Fenway Sports Group. I shouldn't throw shade at them because I don't think it's them because they own Pittsburgh. But yeah, we'll hit the East today and we'll go to the West the next episode and just kind of give our little quick rundowns of the teams we think will be in, and we'll go to the Atlantic. And I'll kind of pass it back off to you, Dad. Who are your 5 teams then coming out of the Atlantic? Because we thinking both wildcard teams are probably coming out of the Atlantic.
Gosh.
Doesn't have to be in any particular order.
Any particular order? Okay. Well, I think Florida is obvious. Tampa. I would say that I guess the Bruins would be on my list as long as they can solidify the goaltending.
Yes.
Yep.
And then, gosh, who else in that division could actually make it?
Well, Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto for sure. And
They're
then
just best regular season team in the NHL. So
yeah. And then who am I missing? I know
Pittsburgh
there's.
for me.
Oh yeah, the Penguins. Sorry. Yeah.
oh, they're in the Metro.
What?
Are they?
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. They've been in the Metro forever.
Oh, they have
No, they're in the
actually.
Atlantic.
They're in the Metro. You think the Penguins are making the playoffs too?
Yeah, I do. If they're in the Atlantic, yeah.
They're in the Metro. They've been in the Metro forever. My 5th team, I got all 4 of your teams. My 5th team's Ottawa. I think Ottawa, they got Olmark. They got a goalie. Their D is back healthy.
yeah.
I think Ottawa could actually finally get over the hump this year. Or Detroit. I think one of those 2 teams have
that's what
they're
I'm
going to be
missing, yeah.
fighting between the 2. I think it's going to be. I think the Yzer plan kind of comes to full fruition. It's just always a question mark with goaltending up there. They haven't gotten their guy. I mean, Lyon was good last year, but they still haven't gotten the number 1 guy. I think Ottawa kind of sneaks in a little bit more just because they got a goalie now. They finally got the guy that they need. The other goalie in Boston, by the way, too, is Jonas Corposalo. So they haven't. It's not like they got a dud in return. They still have a halfway decent goalie in Boston as their other guy, but without Swayman, it's not.
But he's not Swayman.
Yeah,
that's
without
for sure.
Swayman, it's not the same.
Yeah.
So Cam,
yeah.
do you want to go back? Do you think Pittsburgh makes it in as a wild card team in the Metro?
No.
No. Okay.
So I think if they're in the Atlantic and they're playing those Atlantic teams, I think they can kind of hang in there with those guys.
I
If
think
they're
the
playing
Atlantic's
them a
better
couple
than the
times a
Metro
year.
this year.
So I mean, Pittsburgh's they lost Gensel, which kind of hurts them for sure. And then I think their starter is the guy that the Canes dished. So it's in Nedeljkovic. So I think he's going to be the starter this year for
Well,
them.
they have what's
they
his
have
face?
Tristan Jarry.
Yeah, Tristan Jarry's healthy
Yeah,
again.
but he kind of
He's been stinking lately too.
That's
So
what I mean. They
Yeah.
they kind of have thrown him to the wolves and have to kind of embrace Nedeljkovic, which good for him. I mean, he was always a player that the Canes kind of looked at, but again, I think the kind of the crucial year that Nedeljkovic needed to have a good year, being the backup in
Mhm.
Carolina, he didn't have it, which is why Carolina dished him. So, and I think that's the difference between him and Kochetkov. I think Kochetkov's going to be better. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, it's for the East in general. I mean, I definitely think I do. I think for the first time in a while, I think the Atlantic is the stronger division than the Metro is.
yeah,
It hasn't been like that for a while, but I think if you look at it's not that I mean,
it's
the
hard to
Atlantic
say
has been
because the
getting.
Stanley Cup champions come out of the Atlantic for the past like
That's
5
what I mean.
years.
So it's one of those where you look at it, you're like, I mean, I think the Metro still has three really strong teams, but no other team really got better out of the
Mhm.
The Islanders,
Metro.
in my opinion, got worse. They're missing
I
Sorokin to
mean,
start the season too.
well, the problem the Islanders are kind of in the situation that they don't know if they're in a rebuild or if they're trying to scrape by with
Mhm.
the guys they have, or they don't really know. They're kind
They
of
have
in this
such bad
limbo
salary
state,
cap
kind of like
issues.
Ottawa. Ottawa's like that too. They're kind of in this limbo state where
But Ottawa
can
at least
they?
got better. They got Allmark. They added, I think, a
Mhm.
defenseman as well too. Like they added a couple pieces where I was like, you know what?
Mhm.
They made some positive adjustments. It's not, I'm not saying it's groundbreaking, but it's positive adjustments to where they were.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think they could go from being a bottom 10 team to
And this will
15 to
be the
20.
first
You
year
know?
without DJ Smith behind the bench to start the year.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's
that's
true.
true. I
Yeah.
New
forgot he got
coach.
replaced
He got replaced halfway through the season. So,
halfway
and
through the
then
season
they
last
kind of
year.
started turning around towards the latter half, but like
Yeah.
kind of like they always did under
I was about to
DJ.
say they always do that.
But
So
with a new coach going into the fresh season, maybe training camp was different. Maybe it's not, relax, kind of have fun, let's go out and screw around. Maybe it's a completely different training camp. Maybe off season was completely different.
Mhm.
Maybe all the guys stayed around. Maybe all the guys wanted to see there's a whole plethora of differences that could happen. And I think having a new coach, fresh start, I think they added the pieces they needed. And I think that Ottawa has the best chance of securing another wild card spot.
yeah, being the surprise team, but
Yep.
I don't I don't think the Flyers got a whole lot better. The Islanders
No.
definitely didn't get better. The Penguins, I don't think got better. They're staying the same, which is why I kind of had them in that, fighting for a playoff spot because they were fighting for a playoff spot last year. So
I don't know if Malkin had a halfway decent year last year. I don't think he replicates. I think
yeah,
Letang had a halfway decent year. I'm not sure how much he replicates. I think
Mhm.
that they're still on a steady decline. The only person on that roster that I'm like, he could single-handedly probably carry him to the playoffs is Crosby.
Mhm.
But that revolves around him having another. I mean,
yeah, and then
he's going to have another monster season. Who are we kidding?
and then I think
Yeah.
I honestly think out of all the teams in the Metro, I think the team that finishes last is probably going to be the Capitals.
I don't
So
disagree with you. They
I think
did.
they're going to be not great this year because they're in that kind of there's and the funny thing is too is like we're kind of talking about this. There are really three teams in the Metro where they have some older guys that are still hanging around. The Capitals can't really get rid of Ovechkin,
They
so
could.
he's basically going to retire as a Capital. So I really think the upper management, of the Capitals are basically like, look, we're going to ride out a year or two of Ovechkin again,
Yeah.
and then we're going to go into a rebuild. So
Rumor has it on the rumor mill that Tom Wilson might be on the trade block to try and get something in return for a rebuild because
listen,
he's got some value.
if I'm the Capitals, if I see that we're a pretty well below 500 team going into Christmas, I'm looking at dishing some big guys to get
Mhm.
some return, get
Yep.
some draft stock, get some young players. I don't disagree. I think we could see them go into a full blown rebuild even before
Yeah.
Ovechkin leaves.
Yeah.
And I think because they're really they're kind of, and without saying it, they're politely trying to kind of nudge him out. They're like, hey
Mhm.
man, look, we're trying to rebuild here. Like we know you want to stay. That's fine, but we're in a full blown rebuild at this
Yeah.
point. They might just end up saying that to him, like, look, we're going to rebuild. We don't care if you like it or not. You can leave. We don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
It's going to come to that point.
It's
So
going to come to that, quite honestly. And I think that, and I saw videos of Ovi skating at practice, and oh my God, I mean, I look like a better skater at beer league hockey than he did in preseason or in training camp. I was like, holy smokes! If that's the best he's got in training camp, then of course he doesn't skate during a game anyways. He just coasts and he stands on the blue line and waits to get open and for a shot. I mean, that's all they use him for. And so he does have a little bit of value when it comes to the power play, but man, if you're building a franchise around a player like Obi still, then you're in a world of hurt because it's not getting better.
I think if you were to put him on a cup contending team, I think you see a completely different Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, maybe,
but
maybe I don't know. I mean, we can't prognosticate whether he would or he wouldn't, but at the same time, he maybe he would. I mean, but the way he looked right now, and then some of the, I mean, you could see his training efforts over the summer were, if anybody was, putting on the dad bod in the summertime, man, it was Alex Ovechkin. Holy
He's always
smokes.
kind of had one.
Yeah, he's always.
He's always had one, but he's never had one, I think, to the degree that he had this summer, quite honestly. Yeah. So,
well, I think too, he's probably trying to enjoy life a little bit more. He has a kid now, so he's trying to, which again I understand, but like you said, if Washington thinks they're gonna try and do a quick rebuild around him for a year or two,
it's not the way. Yeah, it's not going to work.
The right move, and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I think it's not going to work, and they're also going to lose all of their GM, their coach, like everybody's going to get fired. So that's kind of how I look at it.
I think I think the take from the Capitals finishing close to the bottom is right there. Unfortunately I think the team that probably finishes at the bottom is Columbus, and that's just awful circumstances. I mean, they lose their best player because of the just awful situation where drunk driver takes their life, and it's terrible. But I feel so bad for that organization. They finally get a superstar to come and sign with the city and commit to being there, and it's just a terrible situation, and we wish the family and the Goudreaus all the best, and that Columbus fan base there. They might have one of the better fan bases in the NHL, just as pure passion and everything like that. And I think that I think that this year maybe they just are playing with a different rhythm, and they have a whole lot of compassion and a whole lot of energy due to that, because we saw it happen with Vegas, right before their season, their first inaugural season. They had the tragedy of the Vegas shooting, and it ended up kind of galvanizing the group into being one, and they went on a deep playoff run, ended up making the finals, losing to said Capitals that we were just talking about. But like I said, I really feel bad for that organization. I mean, they've had a tough go of it. Like I said, keeping their superstars and getting superstars to come there, and they finally got one, and the team started to look like it was on the up and up, and started to have some good prospects last year, started playing some good hockey games toward the latter half of the season, and to unfortunately lose your best player due to something as stupid as drunk driving, it just is very very saddening. But we will unless you guys have something else to say on Columbus.
The only thing I wanted to close on my final comment with the Eastern, our three picks on the Eastern, which I think all three of us had the same. I think the wild card in all three of those, where they finish, is absolutely going to come down to goaltending.
Yep.
And I think if Shesterkin has a great year, then I think Rangers finish first. If he doesn't, you could throw a blanket over those three teams. I think that so really the wild card is goaltending, and if all three of them get good goaltending, I tell you what, the Metro is going to be fun to watch this year.
Kochetkov's going to have an unreal year, and Carolina's going to finish first. That's what I'm saying right now.
All right.
Like you said, I mean, and
I hope so.
Like, kind of to wrap up too is, with that goaltending thing is, this is kind of for a lot of these teams and stuff, you're going to see like, and there's a lot of, I think the movement too, and we kind of harp on this too a lot, is, how important goaltending is. You need a solid goalie to be able to take you deep and run,
the quarterback
every
of
team
hockey
has one. So it's just kind of, it's one of those things where, I for this year specifically, if the Boston and Swayman thing can't get worked out, I mean, Boston's going to be I mean, they're probably going to be a seller team. They're going to be top bottom 10 team in the league, I think.
I
Their
think they
offense
still
isn't good enough to carry them.
Pasta, man. He can single-handedly almost
Sure.
carry
I
them.
mean, yeah, he can win them probably 15 games, but
Yeah.
he's
Swayman
not.
was the
I'll put it
reason
this
they
way,
won
he's
probably
not.
half of those games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pasternak is not Nathan McKinnon. Like, not even close.
Oh, I think
Nathan
Pasta's
McKinnon's
top 5 player
or
in the NHL.
I think he's not McDavid. Like, he literally cannot carry an offense, and I think that would be the only way that they would finish outside the top 10 if they didn't pick up or they didn't get Swayman. And then obviously you got the issues with, I mean, that obviously I'm talking about next year, but with the Shesterkin contract, I mean, Shesterkin's going to want 12. He's going to want 11, 12 million. So are the Rangers going to pay him? I don't know.
You're gonna have to.
You guys get in the comments. Let us know. Do you think the Rangers are going to pay Shesterkin 11 or 12 million next year, which is what he wants?
Yeah.
I don't think they will, but hey, who knows? And if they do, awesome. That means that they're going to lose how many superstars on the front end, and they're going to be a stinky team for a long time again.
Ergo Edmonton Oilers.
That's right. They're going to be really bad. And again, shout out to Edmonton. They did make it to the Cup final for sure. But again,
they finally got to sign a big name player.
Well, they finally got some defense and some good goaltending, which is what we've been saying that they've needed for so long.
Yep.
They finally now Darnell Nurse still stinks. He's still awful. One of the worst contracts in the
At the
NHL.
contract
Specifically,
yes.
Yeah, for sure. And then they getting some good goaltending on a Stuart Skinner. Can he keep that up? Is he going to get better? Is he going to stay the same? Is he going to get worse? I don't know. No one knows. Who knows? That might have been their one and done chance to win a cup. But yeah, I think especially the Metro is going to be a lot tighter than we think. I don't think one team's just going to run away with it. I could be wrong. I think the Atlantic. I think Florida's still the dominant team. I mean, they did lose a couple pieces for sure, but they still got Bobrovsky. So that's the key for them. And he's been playing crazy. So unless he has a bad year, I think they still are topping the Atlantic or right up there, along with the regular season gurus in Montreal or Toronto. So, but we'll see.
Well, the best thing is that we're right around the corner from the start of the season, so we're going here quicker
Cam,
than we
know. Hold on, Cam. To go back to your point, I got Pasta my top 5 players in the NHL right now. I think there's only 4 players better than him. I think it goes Cale Makar at 4, Nikita Kucherov at 3, Nathan McKinnon at 2, Connor McDavid at 1.
So you're leaving Barkov off that list?
Yes. Well, no, he's not. I mean, he's probably in the top 10. I don't think he's a top 5 forward in the NHL.
Interesting.
Barkov, and another one.
Reinhart.
Reinhart's not a top 20 player in the NHL. He had one good year. Let's call a spade a spade.
All right.
He had 50 goals last year. That's awesome. Great for him. What does he put up the rest of his career? It's an averaging 20 goals a season, 50 points. He's not a top 20 player in the NHL. He had a great power play year. But the only other player that might who's the big Donnie from not Nichushkin, but the other Rantanen. He's up there too, and Leon's up there. But anyways, we'll wrap there and we'll bid you guys adieu. So that is episode 1. I hope you guys enjoyed our special guest as well today. Another big
episode 1, season 2.
Yeah, yes, episode 1, season 2. Right. Sorry. Yes. It's actually episode 34, technically speaking. So episode 34 of Kane's Local. But I hope you guys enjoyed the guest. Big shout out again to Jorge Alves for coming on. We do appreciate the time that he offered out to us and some of the insight into what he does for a living and how he effectively helps the Carolina Hurricanes win games, because that's what he's doing basically night in, night out. So. All right, that's where we'll bid you guys adieu, and we'll see you guys next week.